Good morning, everybody. We are Newsroom. This is Elvis President. I'm Evan Jansen, and Kendall Makamate is moving out of shot as we speak. Very good morning to you and to all of you at home, of course. We're broadcasting live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. And today our focus, well, it can only be on the late Cuban president, El Comandante Fidel Castro. Well, he's been described as the greatest leader of the 20th century, who dedicated his entire life to building a better life for all of humanity. So, Elvis, we're asking this question. What is the lesson that you've learned from Fidel Castro's life?
El Comandante, lots of lessons there that people can learn. Education, healthcare, some of the best in the world, but yet a very poor country. So, the question then, of course, relates to him, and what have you learned, the lessons that you've taken from him? One of the very interesting quotes that he's said at one stage, and I would just get it off my chest, of course. He says that even our prostitutes are educated because of education.
Absolutely. The group should always be placed ahead of the individual, in my opinion, if humanity is to prosper on this planet. But, of course, in South Africa, Elvis, we always have to deal with issues of race, it seems like, weekly. Today, there's one that's caused a lot of unhappiness before the courts. We're running a poll about this famous coffin case now.
Coffin case, man put in a coffin, assaulted by two white male. And the question that we pose to you today, should the coffin case accused get bail today? There's 97 votes in, as yet 23 hours left for you to vote. 19% are only saying yes. 81% are saying no, they shouldn't get bail. You can let us know, what do you make of that? You can also send us a tweet on the Twitter handle at SABC.
Yeah, on that very poll, you can also comment on the coffin case. But send us your tweets on Fidel Castro, who will be laid to rest on Sunday. Anyhow, a lot of news on a Friday morning. Let's go to Elvis, our first update.
The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital Trust finally will open its doors today. The last of the three rating agencies is expected to deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. You will find out whether we are just standard or whether we are poor later today. And the Western Cape High Court is expected to hear an application for an interdict by the SABC's only remaining board member. That's all coming up in your headlines. Before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Gentlemen, good morning to you. Quite a lot of golf on the go. Besides all other sports, it's quite interesting that that's our main headline, with Tiger Woods making a comeback.
Tiger's back.
Tiger's out of the woods, is he?
He's not quite out of the woods. He falters a bit on his way out, but we'll be chatting with Evan about that a little later in our Sports Focus on the show. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in our sports today.
I feel good. As I was telling Dio there, is that I felt the feel of the round by the second hole tee shot.
Tiger Woods says he feels good, even though getting off to a brilliant start, he falters on the final 10 holes as he makes his long-awaited comeback to competitive golf. And as football's latest tragic week comes to an end, the coffins of the Chapecoense team that perished in the Colombian air crash get prepared.
Dylan Says rolling, can't get it down, but now
South Africa's Blitzbokke get their 2016-2017 season off to the perfect start as they obliterate Minnows Uganda in Dubai.
6 points to nil now.
All this and more I've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin. It is time for Elvis to bring you the news right now.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour, the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital will today officially open its doors in Parkview, north of Johannesburg. The hospital's official opening comes 3 days before the 3rd anniversary of the passing of the former President Nelson Mandela, whose wish has finally been fulfilled. The hospital will start admitting its first patients early next year. It has state-of-the-art equipment and medical specialists. The hospital CEO, Sibongile Mkabela, says that 1.4 billion rand was raised to build the institution. She says additional funding came from ordinary South Africans. Now, the last of the three rating agencies will deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. Standard & Poor rates the country only one notch above sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status, with a negative outlook. The other two rating agencies, Fitch and Moody's, gave the country a reprieve last week when they left South Africa's credit rating unchanged at 2 notches above junk status, although Fitch cut its outlook to negative because of low growth and political risk, they say. Now, with S&P's rating outlook already negative, there's a possibility that the next move will be a downgrade. So later today, we'll find out. The Western Cape High Court is set to hear an application for an interdict by the SABC's only remaining board member, Professor Mbulaheni Maguve, today. Now, he's seeking to stop an inquiry into the Public Broadcasters Board by Parliament's ad hoc committee, headed by the ANC MP, Vincent Smith. Maguve launched the application on Monday, but Judge Siraj Desai ruled that it would be heard today. This prevented the ad hoc committee from starting with its investigation into the fitness of the SABC board to hold office, which was scheduled for Tuesday this week. Maguve has argued in court papers that the ad hoc committee won't give him a fair and impartial hearing. The Democratic Alliance says it will be in court to oppose Maguve's application. The party says it will argue for the inquiry to go ahead in order to restore the integrity of the public broadcaster. Now, we're asking you the question on this here, and of course you can let us know, in fact, on the poll, about the bail application by 2 men who allegedly forced a man into a coffin and threatened to set him alight. And they are expected to continue in the Middelburg Magistrates Court today. Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martin Jackson allegedly beat farm workers Victor Mhlotshwa before forcing him into the coffin. Proceedings were postponed yesterday because the defense failed to complete its cross-examination. The suspects face charges of assault after allegedly beating Victor Mhlotshwa. The incident was recorded on a cell phone and it went viral earlier this month. Yesterday, investigating officer Dimakatso Bahule opposed the bail application due to threats by residents of Middelburg. The SABC Group CE for Corporate Affairs, Hlaudi Motseneng, has addressed an ANC Youth League gathering in Durban. The theme of the event was economic freedom.
Acting COO of the SABC. When I arrived at the SABC, you know, SABC has been led by many people who are qualified educationally, so doctors, professors, and so on and so on. But when I came, SABC was under government guarantee. When I came, in the bank, we were having around 200 million rands in the bank. I turned SABC around, it was sitting at 1.4 billion rands without those certificates.
Today is the deadline for the National Prosecuting Authority to file additional papers in the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein relating to the appeal of the convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius against his jail sentence. The High Court in Pretoria earlier denied the NPA leave to appeal the 6-year sentence. The sentence was imposed on the former Paralympian for killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp more than 3 years ago. The SCA has already ruled that litigants will have to argue in an open court for and against the application for the leave to appeal. Judge Thokozile Masipa sentenced Pistorius for a second time after his initial conviction of culpable homicide was overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal and converted to murder. The NPA has argued that the High Court has misdirected itself in findings that the aggravating factors in the case were outweighed by the mitigating factors. Now that's your news for now. Now remember that we're asking you a question today relating to the life and times of Fidel Castro and of course what he did for Cuba. We're asking you, what is the lessons that you've learned from Fidel Castro? Personally, we'd like to find out on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. Let us know what's on your mind. We'll read your comments during the course of the program, so keep them coming. Right now, let's start off that conversation with Ib.
Well, Abbas, I do remember he's the guy that made the longest speeches I've ever heard as a student. Those were the ones we had to transcribe, and some of them ran into 8, 9, 10, 12 hours long. Absolutely immense. It's probably the memory that sticks to me of Fidel Castro, the man who made the longest speeches in the history of the world. Now, of course, thousands of Cubans have crowded the streets of Sancti Spiritus to watch the funeral cortege carrying the remains of the Cuban revolutionary leader, Fidel Castro. The cortege is expected to arrive tomorrow at the final resting place of his ashes in Santiago de Cuba.
The Cuban capital, Havana, is a far cry from the vibrant atmosphere that it's known for. People are observing the 9-day mourning period declared after the death of Fidel Castro. A fierce critic of the West, the charismatic Castro is credited with ensuring free access to health and education for its people. A lesson for a country like South Africa.
There's a lot that you can learn from Cuba because Cuba prioritized health and education. Because there's no country that can survive if we don't have educated people. So Cuba today is surviving. It's because most Cubans are educated.
The island state has also been lauded for its humanitarian work in Africa. Cuban doctors were among the first to be dispatched to West Africa to contain the outbreak of the Ebola virus. South Africa remains indebted to Cuba's contribution to improve the lives of ordinary people. And various delegations will attend the funeral service. The importance of Cuba to South Africa is perhaps illustrated by the outpouring of support since the announcement of the death of Fidel Castro was made. With President Jacob Zuma having led the nation in paying tribute by addressing a mass rally here in Havana, many other political parties from the country and parliamentarians are expected to attend the funeral on Sunday. Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News, Havana, Cuba.
Wonderful pictures there coming through from Havana and Cuba. Now, to look at the life of Fidel Castro and his legacy and contribution to the upliftment of Cubans and the liberation struggle of Africa against colonialism, former Umkhonto weSizwe member and Intelligence Minister, Service Minister Ronnie Kasrils is joining us in studio. Very good morning to you, sir, and welcome. First and foremostly, how would you remember Fidel Castro?
I remember him as this outstanding revolutionary, a dynamic man, brave, huge intellect, who transformed his country, this backwater that had been ruled not simply from the United States, but by its mafiosa and a cruel dictator, Batista. I remember having left school here in Johannesburg, and I was in the cinema house, and they suddenly broadcast scenes of Fidel in the Sierra Maestra, because at that stage the Americans weren't so afraid of these bearded people who were struggling for freedom.
Yes.
And I thought, what an incredible man. I never imagined I would meet him, which I did many times after that, and many times going to Cuba, but meeting Cubans in far-flung places, Angola, remote areas, Ethiopia, Algeria, and this was the magnetism of Fidel, a product of the Cuban people and the Cuban Revolution, a very humane humane person, in fact.
So when you met him that first time, I want you to go back and relate that story for us.
Yes, I was in Cuba on a delegation with Joe Slovo. Sorry, no, it was earlier. I was with Joe Modise, commander of MK, and we went to a function for President Chissano, and there was Fidel, and his eyes were on Modise. He was very taken up with the struggle of Africa.
Yes.
And Chissano recognized my wife and myself because we had been in Dar es Salaam years before. And Fidel was absolutely amazed at this. These two white kids, we were much older, and he inquired about this, and he was just so interested and so kind. He called the photographers, the official ones, to take pictures. Unfortunately, we never got them.
Yeah.
And then there were other occasions when, as I say, with Joe Slovo.
Yes.
And that was a very exceptional period where he gave us a briefing on the victory over South African racist forces at Cuito Cuanavale, 1987-88. And we were with him for several hours as he elucidated about this incredible event and what transpired afterwards. And we must always remember when the South Africans invaded Angola in 1975 to prevent the MPLA coming to power, and again in 87, 88, it was the Angolans who asked the Cubans to come in for assistance. They never simply invaded countries at all.
Yes.
But he was a dynamic person, and he would joke, he would offer us coffee, he would carry on with the presentation, and it was riveting. You just hung onto every word. I heard some talk about Fidel speaking for hours and hours. I've been in Revolution Square in Havana with 500,000 people for 4 or 5 hour speeches. These were education events, and nobody tired in those hours. Everybody was riveted to this great leader of the Cuban Revolution and a liberator of Africa.
Yeah, but you want to also ask a question.
Yeah, I want to talk to Mr. Kasrils, because when he was here in South Africa in 2001, he spoke at length about racism and the fight against racism and imperialism. What do you think are the lessons that we've learned around issues of racism on the continent from someone like Fidel Castro?
You have to educate your people. This is the way you deal with prejudices of the past. You have to explain. You mustn't tire of that. You've got to have a first-class education system in your schools. They did this within a year or two of coming to power. They had their education running in terms of a new transformed system. They took a year off everybody, students, teachers, the lot, in order to go into the countryside and bring literacy to a people 80% illiterate, who then became conscious and could understand. The education factor is vital, but then obviously the way you transform society and deal with poverty, deal with inequality, so that those who have thought that they were better, many of whom have fled because they didn't like this, but there are many there, middle classes, etc., who came to realize and understand what non-racism was about. And I'll tell you something about the non-racism of Cuba. You see that racism is unnatural, and they make this point. The fact that people use their eyes and bang, it's about what color is this person and react that way. You do not have that in Cuba. It's the transformation of the mind that has gone with the material transformation of life.
We seem to be a little bit lost. No, I don't just think in South Africa, but I think in the wider world. Where do you think the revolution, the ideals, with where we are as a society, where is it today?
Well, you know, unfortunately, we've faltered in our country in terms of real transformation. And, you know, we've got our leaders speaking today, and I'm pleased they are, about this great figure and what he achieved. But I think that they miss an essential point, and that was this little country, the small country, in the shadow of a gigantic a gargantuan that bestrides the world and wanted to crush them. The little guy like David stood up against Goliath and followed through in terms of transforming the material and the spiritual aspects of the country. We went off that path. Under Mandela and Becky, we had a vision. We were going, I feel, we were going slowly. We didn't do enough on, for instance, that educational front, etc., not paying for it. But under the current leadership in this country. We've veered off course, and we have something which the Cubans really fought against in the Batista period, and that was the cronyism, the exploitation, the demeaning of human beings, etc. We've got to get back to those essential values, which is what the ANC had been about.
In that process, is there a sense that we've kind of fallen into this materialism, modern materialism trap, and we're bringing our children up in this kind of modern materialistic paradigm, and that kind of messes with our heads a little bit, maybe?
I would totally agree with you. You know, people are trying to attack Fidel and his legacy and what Cuba is. They take their minds off what global capitalism is doing to our people, to the African American people, the Hispanics, to the people of India, of Asia, all over the world. The world is becoming molded in that epitome of Hollywood, of the Americanized culture, the supremacy of an individual, and the fact that what life's about is grab all you can, that material factor, and the devil take the high note of it. This is the biggest threat to humanity. This is why Fidel Castro and the example he set with Che Guevara and other very key leaders and their people who they brought up in this consciousness. That's what's needed.
You talk about this paradigm or this cycle that we're stuck in, which is probably best described, probably consumption, production, destruction. We kind of there in this world today. How do we break that? How do we... It seems as if we're losing a little bit of interest or a little bit of focus.
You know, this is, for me, the key lesson of Cuba. How do we break out of this? Because this has become the world culture thrust upon people in which indigenous cultures are smashed. And this is what comes to the fore instead of the Ubuntu of our people and people everywhere. So what does Fidel's life show? What is the lesson of the Cuban Revolution? Many, many lessons. But the prime one is stand up for your principles and your values, even in the shadow of that giant, that gargantuan. And stand up, and on the basis of your people, you'll have the strength. You get that strength by your example, your values, and the education that you put into their minds. And then you're powerful. We lost that faith in the masses of our people. If you think back to 1990, how the masses really helped to unban the ANC, the Communist Party, PAC, etc. We've gone downhill. We've moved away from the masses, and we can see the destruction that's been wrought on our society, and primarily on those in the shadows, those on the margins, including, by the way, the students. And this is the anger from the students, the anguish.
We have a lot of revolutionary talk in South Africa now, in South African politics specifically. What do you make of this kind of divisive revolutionary talk that we have as part of our discourse right now?
I found it regrettable. This is something that's tactical, that we've seen in many countries where you have revolutionary change, where the people are full of expectations, where leadership get wrapped up, caught up in feathering their own nests, and you have the crony capitalism, the worst aspects of humanity. And in that situation, it goes downhill and you get lost. So we see that's happened. It's not just specific to South Africa. Again, we come back. We've got many examples in history, internationally, revolutions, etc. But the key thing about Fidel is how they kept to the principles of their revolution, which is from 1959. And I'll just say this, in terms of that, you keep to that mark. And what struck me when I first started meeting the Cubans, 1977 in Angola, to be specific, that was 18 years after their revolution. And 18 years after their revolution, they had wiped out illiteracy. They had become a world power in terms of health. in terms of production of doctors, in terms of building their homes, their houses, and that quality of life in that short time. And here we are dithering, and we hear our leaders say, when there's criticism from civil society and so on, they say, well, it's only been 22 years. What do you expect? We expected far more, given the sacrifices, and we deviated from it.
Now, Mr. Kasrils, in the face of isolation by the US over the years, and of course, the Cuban economy devastated through these trade embargoes, what do you think will happen now after the death of Fidel Castro?
Well, I think his legacy is such that there's a collective there, there's a party, there's civil society. People think there's not. They're the committees of the revolution, which are in every street level. And it's a difficult time, it's complex. There's an outstanding leader in Raúl Castro, in the Fidel tradition. They're making reforms, they're taking a course. The Vietnamese, the Chinese have done something similar in terms of opening up the market. But I think that they have such a commitment to their principles, to the Fidel vision, to their values, that I believe that we won't see Cuba going under and succumbing to the commercialism and the materialism of the West, of America.
What are some of the lessons you think that we can take from this great revolutionary leader?
Well, you know, I have stressed this point about being strong with your people, because that's the unbreakable aspect of the backbone, and giving the education and giving the leadership, standing up for your independence and the freedom of your people, not succumbing to that. And then there's the question of tackling and dealing with the problems of any society. So in Cuba, as you've said, it was very backward in 1959, in poverty, etc. It was under threat from the United States, who invade in 1962 with Bay of Pigs, their proteges, their surrogates. And Cuba doesn't deviate from that creation of a society that provides jobs, clean water, better housing, that provides land for those who don't have it, that organizes its production. It believed in nationalization. There are different ways one can learn from the question of what goes wrong in relation to it. It shouldn't be a taboo subject. It should be open for discussion. We just put it on the back burner, those clauses of the Freedom Charter. The rising of people's educational levels, and with it their culture. I've mentioned the question of dealing with illiteracy.
Yes.
And they wiped it out in 1 year. You know, this is something I did raise with our dear President Mandela in earlier times. Shouldn't we do something of that kind? Kada Asmal, as education minister, came up with a plan. 5 years, we'll wipe out literacy. He said that in 2000, and there was no plan, no real implementation. And what Fidel shows is that have your plan and then focus on it to implement it, not just leave it out there and new prime ministers or ministers come in, they revise it ad infinitum, and you get nowhere. So the will, the decision-taking, the driving aspect of Cuba, the dynamism of the country, that's what's needed.
So the revolution continues.
A luta continua.
Mr. Kasrils.
Obrigado.
Obrigado, senhor.
Viva Fidel.
Viva Fidel. Former Umkhonto we Sizwe member and intelligence service minister. Remember him, Ronnie Kasrils. We continue this discussion. It's over to you.
The revolution touched all of our lives, yes. And we will continue the fight until our very last breath. So we're asking you, what is the lesson that you have learned from Fidel Castro? A wonderful life. 90 years old, passed away last week. Let's take a look at some of your tweets. What are you telling us right now? What are you thinking? Lechasa comes in. He says, well, Newsroom, the late Fidel Castro was a true revolutionary leader. He fought for equality. Cuba, like I do at ZB Makopong. Yes, fight for equality. That's what it's about. Unati comes in. He says, Newsroom, he was a true leader and he loved his people and his home language. Interesting observation there, Unati. This from the Oracle. It says, Newsroom, you can learn that every leader should be retired after 8 years. Otherwise, people have to suffer. See you. Okay. Don't quite get that one from the Oracle. But anyhow, we move on. Picture of the day today. This one comes from Crystal Johnson. It's captioned, Rihanna and Prince Harry at the Man Aware event for World AIDS Day in Barbados yesterday. Hashtag World AIDS Day, of course. What wonderful pictures we see there. Prince Harry and Rihanna. Well, we've just been told that Prince Harry has a new lady in his life. An American actress. I forgot her name. Anyhow, we move on. Thabo Pakis, well, for the comment of the day, he says, and we're talking, of course, about this interesting story in South Africa. He talks about racism will never, I repeat, never end, so long as both sides can justify their wrongful deeds on one another. And he's talking in particular about the coffin assault. Of course, the question we're asking you today, or the poll we're putting up with regards to that question of the day, of course, is do you think they should get bail today, these two gentlemen? No, that was yesterday's question. That was yesterday's poll. Today's poll, of course, we're talking about the coffin case and whether they should get bail. Well, a little bit earlier, we had about 100 votes, and it was an overwhelming no. No, don't give them bail. That's the sense that South Africa has. Of course, we're celebrating the life of Fidel Castro here today. We're laid to rest in Santiago de Cuba on Sunday. Time for a break. Don't go away.
What causes Parkinson's? How common is it?
Your research showed that it's slightly more prevalent in men.
Yeah.
It's equally affected at women as well.
Yeah.
And all races can be affected with Parkinson's. There is no such thing as one race is more prevalent than the other.
Parkinson's disease is the disorder of degeneration of the neurons, therefore exposes one to have those unwanted movements of the body.
I live my normal life. I wake up in the morning, I do some exercises here and there.
It's just a movement disorder. It's going to affect how he lives his life. And I think as a family, it's just helped us get a little bit closer and surround him.
Catch Health Talk every Saturday from 9 to 10 with Dr. Silo Mutawo.
Breaking news this hour. DNA results have confirmed that the remains found in Baklu along the Yekske River on November the 22nd are those of a 3-year-old Everite Chauke. The toddler from Alexandra Township drowned during fatal flash floods in Gauteng at the beginning of this month, prompting an extensive search that lasted over 2 weeks. Mahaketla Mushlabe is at the Bramley police station. Mahaketla, in fact, is not there yet. We'll come back and we'll give you some more details on this particular story with our reporter on the scene a little bit later, so stay tuned. Let's now take a look at our poll and, of course, the question that we posed to you there. Let's see if we can put up the poll there. The question, should the coffin case accused get bail today? What do you make of it? And 155 votes thus far, 22 hours left to vote. 79% of you are saying no, they should not get bail, they should stay in jail. And 21% are saying yes, And of course, looking at the numbers, it's still going up. You can also participate in the poll. Should the coffin case accused get bail today? Let's take a look at some of your comments, what you have to say about this case. Let's take a look at what's there's this one from Unati that says they must forget about desserts and brine meat and prepare for Christmas in jail. Hashtag coffin case, hashtag coffin assault. Akhasa Butler Molo says the coffin, nope. The coffin case suspect should spend the festive season behind bars. Finish and clear. Remember who said that? Unati Grootboom continues, says, I don't think they should get bail. They did a horrible thing to that poor guy. Hashtag coffin case, hashtag coffin court case. Tandanani says, no bail at all. They must face the hand of the law. The long hand of the law must get them, or the long arm of the law, rather, should get them. Stabile says, no, the life of the victim will not be safe. Says Tabile there. He might be interrogated or intimidated by the perpetrators. Let's now take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital will officially open its doors in Parkview, north of Johannesburg today. Wonderful story there after some time that hospital finally opened. We'll also get a report from our reporters at the scene there. Yesterday in Gambia, the first series of the electoral challenge to President Yahya Jammeh, who has said only Allah can remove him from office and once claimed that he would rule the tiny riverside West African nation for 1 billion years. Now, final preparations are underway for the burial of the remains of the former Cuban President Fidel Castro in his hometown of Santiago on Sunday. Now, you can find all these stories and more on our Facebook page and the SABC News website. And of course, we're asking you the question today, what do you make of the life of Fidel Castro and what can we learn from him? Now, let's take a look at what's on the front pages of the newspapers around the globe. And we start off in Europe. The Times report that Britain is leaning towards a softer Brexit after ministers admitted that they were considering plans to allow low-skilled migration and could pay to access the single market after leaving the European Union. Moving to New York, the Wall Street Journal says that President Francois Hollande said he wouldn't stand for re-election in May, an unprecedented decision for a French head of state that adds more uncertainty to the presidential race. And then finally in Florida, the Miami Herald reports that Miami's tightly knit and often contentious exile community is full of people whose paths has crossed Fidel Castro's. Those are some of the headlines that we do have for you. Let's now take before we get to the break, let's go back to Eben because we continue this discussion on the life and times of Fidel Castro.
Yeah, Elvis, thank you for you guys just joined us. Now, I've managed to, we've asked Mr. Kasrils to hang around with him because it's a little bit of a treat today to get the kind of inside track of what happened in our past and recent past. I want to talk to you about Cuba's role in Angola, Guido Carnaval, and maybe if you can talk about the great victories that South Africa had against the previous regime in Angola and Namibia without any reporting that we've seen in this country.
Well, South Africa's victories,
well,
you talk about the
we
racists.
Are South Africa. No. Against the racist regime.
Okay, no, the struggle for freedom and independence of Angola, which goes back many years, like ours, in the 60s when they, like Umkhonto we Sizwe, ANC, moved to armed struggle. By 74, Portuguese colonialism collapses, gives the opportunity for Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau and Angola to become free. The MPLA forms government, and the South African racists attack. They invade. They're very powerful compared to this country of Angola, and they start racing up the coastal roads. 1,000 kilometers, they reach the gates of Luanda. By then, Agostinho Neto, the leader of Angola, of the MPLA, had called on Fidel to say, you know, we need your help. We're going to fall. We just don't have the power and the weaponry. Fortunately, Cuba was well endowed with Soviet weaponry, but very quickly Fidel responds to the request, and they arrive in Luanda in the nick of time. And I've been to the battlegrounds around Luanda and saw 20 kilometers to the north where the South Africans had finally come. They went around the capital and they attacked the water supply for Luanda, captured that. And then the Cubans came in with the Angolan forces, FAPLA, and they began the counterattack. And soon they were driving the racist South African Defence Force back out of Angola, across the borders into Namibia. But the South Africans never gave up, supported, encouraged by the CIA and the USA. And they supported UNITA, this counter-revolutionary outfit. So it was a bane in the throat of the Angolan people and their government. We had our camps there, and we fought against UNITA as well. The South Africans invaded time and time again in the southern part of Angola for at least 300 kilometers to the north, were occupied virtually, no-go territory for the Luanda government. They attempted in 1987 to attack on the Caprivi Strip, the stronghold of Savimbi at Jamba, and they marched on it, and they, with their columns, their weaponry, latest supplies from the Soviet Union, and they did very well until they came to a river near Quito, Carnaval, called the Lomba. And at that point, the South Africans struck. They came in with their armed columns and their air force, and they decimated FAPLA on the ground. Stragglers got into Quito, and it could have fallen, and it was strategic. At that point, if it had fallen, the South Africans, with their proxy UNITA, would have split the country in half. They would have certainly advanced much further north, again in response to the call of the Angolans, of their government. Help us. We need you desperately. And in no time, Fidel had sent the crackest troops, their best troops, their cream, into Angola, and they came in, they rescued the situation at Quito Carnavale. It had become something of a stalemate, but Colonel Breitenbach of the South African Defence Force admits by March, the end of March 1988, our attempts ground to a dead halt, and there were many casualties, especially amongst UNITA on our side. The white soldiers were always in the rear. And then the masterstroke from Fidel. And, you know, I see him explaining this to Slovo and the delegation I was with in his defense headquarters at the end of '88. And there he explains how they advanced and how they had this strategic initiative. And then with Soviet MiG-23 planes, which were far superior to the South African Mirages, they then occupied, they controlled the skies. And that was the end for the South African Defence Force. For racists in Angola, they had to withdraw into Namibia, and the rest's history, which is why he said that the history of Africa will have to be retold as before and after Quito Carnavale. Namibia becomes independent in 1990. It paves the way for the change in our country.
Incredible. Never reported on in South Africa, unfortunately.
Well, it is. We've had debates, even in Parliament. We've made the explanations, and those died in the wool, and I'll call them racists. You know, and we today we're looking at what's happening about the body, the person forced into a coffin. This is the racist mindedness of the SADF. Those arrogant leaders, from Jan Geldenhuys to others, Magnus Milan, they prattle on. We won. They never defeated us. Pik Botha, yes, we wanted to negotiate and give independence to Namibia as long as the Cubans would leave. South Africa had to eat humble pie because of Fidel and the Cubans who have assisted Africa clean out the racist army.
Wonderful to hear that from the horse's mouth, as it were. Thank you for coming in and sharing some time with us.
Wonderful, thank you.
South Africa's former Intelligence Service Minister Ronnie Kasrils, of course, a member of Umkhonto weSizwe, and one of the icons of our struggle against, well, racism in South Africa. Let's take a couple of your tweets, what you are telling us. Are there any comments, anything you want us to ask Mr. Kasrils? CYP says, Newsroom, he was an honest man. With peace and love, he was enjoying to help poor people. Talking about Fidel Castro. Well, Mpo says, revolutionary leader, thanks for opening their borders and institutions for us. Yes. This one from Garth. He says, Fidel Castro killed 3,600 people by firing squad since 1959, not counting the people that he killed trying to leave. That's your side of the story, Garth. You believe it, my friend. We're going to take a short commercial break.
You know what's funny? If
Yes?
I could just come in.
Please.
You know, I don't like to see things in coloured terms.
Yeah.
I've been listening on the radio all morning. We get this fellow Garth. You know, what gives? People in the majority of this colour, he's a killer, he's a dictator, 3,600. Black South Africans, coloured South Africans. This man helped the poor.
Yeah.
He helped Africa.
He helped
This is the two sides of the story. Get it, South Africa. Get it. Let's put an end to this racist mentality.
Now, Mr. Kasrils, you've just mentioned it, because it's a mixed bag. Some people feel that he was a dictator. Others, the majority, feel that he was a humanitarian. Your thoughts on that?
It is the majority, because the majority of people of the whole planet, the 6 billion of us, 5 billion, live in dire straits. We know about the 1% that rule the world, the super rich. These are the Trumps, these are the Rockefellers. They in New York and Washington and London and Paris and Berlin and so on. The majority of people, they see things in terms of who stands up for the poor, who stands up for justice, who stands up for a better life. And that's the yardstick, and that's what differs between people. Yes, I'm not saying that those with these brainwashed minds are like dreadful people, but they're just failing to understand the differences in the world. You'll never get all the people saying, unless it's for Mother Teresa, you know, an American pie and nice soft things, saying, oh, what a wonderful person. When you see the rich, when you see the wealthy and arrogant attacking somebody, that's the mark of what Fidel Castro stood for, because they're attacking, not him, they're attacking those who want to end enslavement, who want to end poverty and all of these evil things.
Mr. Kasrils, on that note, thank you so much. A luta continua.
A luta continua. Vittoria is certe.
There you go. That's what we got to leave it now. Let's take a break, and we'll be... in fact, let's go back to Eben quickly just to go to the break.
No, actually, Elvis, we're going to take a short commercial break because the wick has turned right in the red here. Let's take a short break. We'll be back with you right after this.
Of South Africa's celebrities were battling it out for 40 grand at the 5th annual Celebrity Cook-Off in Witbank.
We look forward to welcoming everybody to Emlahleni because this is the place of coal.
For a starter, I'll give you guys 45 minutes to prepare, and the main course will be 1 hour 30 minutes.
The team name is Iniqua Stars, the clever choices.
Yes! Manora Pizza.
3 Michelin stars.
Yes!
Like a niece, what do? Drum roll! Swami and the defending champion, the Michelin star!
That's Trends Travel every Sunday, 12 to 1 p.m. on SABC News.
Yeah, welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, the biggest comeback in the history of all of sport. Happened last night, and Kendall is with me to talk about it because Tiger Woods is back, and I'm a big fan, always been a big fan of Tiger Woods, but even more so after last night because he showed that his body's right, his mind is right, still got it. And although you could see he ran out of a little bit of competitive puff towards the end, but all-round great performance.
Absolutely, and I think the big thing is what you just said, the competitive puff. I would actually beg to differ on that. I think he's still got it in him to. He's still got the motivation to try and do well, and I think that's what's going to be happening all through the next round and stuff. Because a lot of people are talking about how he worked very hard to get into shape for this. He's lost a few kilos, as you can see.
Yeah, he's lost about 10, 15 kilos actually,
100%.
and that's not fat. He lost muscle. He toned himself. You see his body is almost half the size it were when
He's been working very hard in the last 15 months or so. And I'll tell you what, you look at his swing, and I think there's a lot you can tell us about how his swing has actually either changed or stayed the same, but it's still getting him the drive that he needs.
You know, as a golfer, the most difficult thing you can do is to change the shape you hit the golf ball. Now, you know, during this last decade, he's been struggling. He's been with different coaches, and he's been hitting the ball with a cut or a fade off the tee, which means he moved the left to right. I see now he's changed that shape and he's hitting it the other way, which is a great big change. But he's become a lot more consistent, I see, and he hits the ball a little bit further than he was. Also, he looks like his body likes the swing a lot more because I never saw him winch once in pain throughout this round. Even, you know, even turning around or bending down uncomfortably or anything. Yeah, it ended in the water there on the last hole. But I thought he showed enough to show us that next year you can't discount him in the big tournaments.
I'll tell you that. In fact, he's even got, like, I think he's got 4 rounds in which he can prove himself. There's no cut in this particular one, and we're hoping that we actually see him all the way till the end of the tournament. And I think he's feeling good. He said so himself. He's feeling good about his body. He's feeling good about his golf, and I think it's something to look forward to.
He's looking great, which is the thing. He's looking like a happy camper. He's looking like he wants to be there, you know, and that's kind of half the battle. When I saw him 18 months ago, he didn't look like he was enjoying all the sort of schlep that goes with professional golf, being in a different town every week, having to travel, having to be a father, and then your body doesn't like the hard training, the 6 hours a day of training, you know. And I think finally he's in a space now where maybe he can train a little bit like he used to. Certainly looks like it, and I think, you know, the game needed him and the game missed him.
Yeah, it's been about a decade, you said that, since he won his last major.
Yeah, 2008.
Yeah, so most people are looking forward to seeing him compete at that top of the golfing world again. And let's see if he can get himself through to this to the end of the Hero Golf Championship.
Eldrick Tiger Woods, he is back, and the world suddenly feels a little bit better for it. But we've got a developing story happening right now. Alvis is standing by to put us in the loop.
We gave it to you earlier. Breaking news. DNA results have confirmed that the remains found in Baklu along the Yekske River on November the 22nd are those of the 3-year-old Everite Chauke. The toddler from Alexandra Township drowned during fatal flash floods in Gauteng at the beginning of this month, prompting an extensive search that lasted over 2 weeks. Our reporter, Mahaketla Moshlabe, is at the Bramley police station. A very good morning to you, Mahaketla. What is the latest on the missing Everite Chauke there?
Good morning to you, Elvis. Yes, of course, we're just outside Bramley Police Station in Johannesburg, where the Chauke family were accompanied by Gift of the Givers early this morning to have DNA results confirmed whether the body of a toddler that was recovered on the 22nd of last month belongs to their daughter. And indeed, the confirmation is that it does belong to Everite Chauke, the 3-year-old toddler that we know was actually taken away by the flash floods early last month. Now, of course, we saw the family after the news were broken to them. They were very, very devastated, but at the same time, they did thank the rescuers as well as police for their tireless efforts in terms of, you know, doing their best to find the body of their daughter. But after that particular confirmation, now we understand that the family will now have to go to the mortuary and complete paperwork. You would remember that the child, of course, is just a 3-year-old Elvis, and the family at that time when the flash flood hit Alexandra. The father tried to actually rescue her and tried to climb the tree, but that's when she actually slipped and fell into the Jacques River. So rescue teams, of course, we understand they had been searching for almost 3 weeks for the toddler until she was found on the shores of the Jacques River in Batlu. So at this point in time, we have also been in touch with Gift of the Givers. They've been giving the family accommodation and trying to give them food and then, try to meet their needs where they need assistance. So at this point in time, we understand also that funeral arrangements are underway. We hear that she will probably be buried next week around Johannesburg.
That's our reporter, Mahaketla Mushlabe, who is at the Bramley Police Station, who gave us the details there of the young Everite Chauke that was found. And, of course, as you heard from him, the funeral will be next week. That's where we got to leave it. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back at the top of the hour.
Assumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. You must fire the principal.
Here too, similar sentiments of underlying racism.
It just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
What is a national anthem and why do we need national anthems? A national anthem becomes an instrument to foster social cohesion, identity, to create a sense of identity of a country.
It does happen that people feel that they cannot commit to what the national anthem does.
Unity is not formed from the sky. People don't just despise the national anthem, but it is because of certain things that are actually happening. The issue of languages, for instance. The issue of apartheid statues and monuments.
As a transgender activist, do you feel welcome? Are you free here in South Africa?
In South Africa, we think that 1994 just took an eraser and erased a lot of the issues of apartheid.
What is the difference between you and me?
You know, a person can easily say we're all human, but we need to embrace our differences.
The fact that it is called a gay club, why are other clubs not called other things?
It's a safety thing, you know. By virtue of actually speaking about this incident, brings about the question of why do you even need a club that needs to be called a gay club? I cannot walk into a club with my lover, my male lover. I cannot walk into Taboo, a South African club, and just hold my lover and we kiss, and then people think it's okay.
They do that?
Well, we do, but then there have been instances of actually people, bouncers walking in and actually telling you to stop or get out of the club.
Do you think it was a mistake that you were born a boy?
I've come to, not to peace with my body, but I've accepted myself where I am completely.
Somebody may say you are lying, because if you have accepted yourself completely as you are, you would be the boy that your mom gave birth to.
I can self-actualize. I can become what I want to be at the end of the day.
Welcome back, everybody. Nice to be with you. Kendall is still here, but we've been joined by Renee Vest. Good morning, Renee.
Good morning, Eben. Good morning, Kendall, and good morning to all of you.
Yeah, nice to have Renee with us, of course. Today, before the court, is an interesting case. So we thought we'd run a poll just to see where you guys are at with regards to the coffin case. Of course, if you don't know the coffin case, it's two white men who put a black man in a coffin and threatened him with a whole host of stuff. It went viral a couple of weeks ago. They're in court today, bail hearing, for a bail hearing. 74 votes, Renee. It's a little bit ominous.
Yes, well, 80% of people are saying no, they should not get bail, which I think we expected that.
Yeah, keep them in prison is what they say. Keep them in prison. That kind of behavior has no place in our society. But let's have a look at some of the comments that you guys are sending through on this poll. Some very interesting takes on it, Kendall.
Kwagazi says, no, they must spend Christmas and New Year behind bars. They forgot that we're living in a new South Africa.
Yeah, tough but fair, I would say.
Siwa Piwe says, yes, they must get bail because it's Christmas month so they can enjoy it with their families.
Oh, wonderful empathy shown there by Siwa Piwe. Kongani Nobela says, Newsroom, SABC, everybody who cares to listen, big N, big O, no. They must stay in jail.
Siafana says, no, that those people, they don't deserve bail. Their place is to stay in jail. I know quite a lot of emotion involved in this particular case, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the kind of thing that South Africans like, but it also polarizes. There's another comment, isn't there? That was the last one. Keep them in jail. Yes, keep them in jail. Now, if you watched the show a little bit earlier, Renee, I'm sure that you maybe seen some of it. We're celebrating the life of Fidel Castro, and we've been asking you, what is the lesson you've learned from Fidel Castro's life? And Ronnie Kasrils was here in the first hour. He said, sometimes you just have to hang tough in the face of insurmountable odds, which is what Fidel Castro has shown the world. What are the lessons that you've learned? The lessons that we've learned? Let's have a look.
Siafana says, Mr. Castro was a good leader and we will always miss him. May his soul rest in peace.
Khoisan Shai says South African revolutionary leaders should have done what Comrade Fidel Castro has done and never compromised with the oppressors. That is a debate for the ages. Was there compromise or wasn't there compromise? Something to be spoken about, I think.
Yeah, no compromise with the oppressors. So CRP comes back, he says, he was an honest man with peace and love. He was enjoying to help poor people. He was fighting for the poor.
Mpo says, revolutionary leader. Thanks for opening their borders and institutions for us.
Garth Kalis reckons Fidel Castro killed 3,600 people by firing squad since 1959, not counting the people that he killed trying to leave. Having said that, you know what, revolutions, that's what happens. There will be casualties. It's either you on one side or you on the other.
I'm with Ronnie Kasrils on this one, Garth. He says that our society in South Africa is a reflection of what is happening. So look at this tweet that you've sent us. A certain segment of our society believes that. The vast majority on the other side, they believe that Fidel Castro was a saint or deserved a sainthood for freeing all of us. Maybe not you, Garth, but all of us. Time for us to take a look at our top stories now.
The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital Trust finally will open their doors today. And the last of the three ratings agencies is expected to deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. And the Western Cape High Court is expected to hear an application for an interdict by the SABC's only remaining board member, Professor Mbulaheni Magube, today. Before we get into that news, let's go over to Kendall to find out what's coming up in the sports over the weekend.
Well, thank you very much. Before we even get to the weekend, we've got a massive comeback that we, Evan and I, touched on a little earlier on. Tiger Woods, he's
the king is back.
The king is back. He's not out of the woods yet, as we mentioned, but he's definitely working his way out. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
I felt good. As I was telling Dio there, is that I felt the feel of the round by the second hole tee shot.
Tiger Woods says he feels good, even though getting off to a brilliant start, he falters on the final 10 holes as he makes his long-awaited comeback to competitive golf. And as football's latest tragic week comes to an end, the coffins of the Chapecoense team that perished in the Colombian air crash get prepared.
Dylan says rolling, can't get it down, but now.
South Africa's Blitzbokke get their 2016-2017 season off to the perfect start as they obliterate Minnows Uganda by 46 points to 0 in Dubai. Of course, I'll be bringing you all of this in more detail at about 10:40, but for now it is back to Renee, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Yes, we start this morning off with some good news for a change. Now, the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital will today open its doors officially. That's in Parkview, north of Johannesburg. Now, the hospital's official opening comes 3 days before the 3rd anniversary of the passing of former President Nelson Mandela, whose wish has finally been fulfilled. The hospital will start admitting its first patients early next year. It has state-of-the-art equipment and medical specialists. The hospital CEO, Sibongile Mkabela, says 1.4 billion rand was raised to build the institution. Now, she says adding additional funding came from ordinary South Africans. Good news story there. Now, moving on, the last of the three rating agencies will deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. Standard & Poor's rates the country only one notch above sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status, with a negative outlook. Now, the other two rating agencies, Fitch and Moody's, gave the country a reprieve last week when they left South Africa's credit rating unchanged at 2 notches above junk status, although Fitch cut its outlook to negative because of low growth and political risk. With S&P's rating outlook already being negative, there is a possibility that the next move will be a downgrade.
Now, there's been some interesting statistical and economic data available this week to discuss. These include the latest credit extension figures. New vehicle sales are again under pressure. We've also had the trade data on imports and exports for October. In addition, the latest RMB BER index of business confidence was also published. And then the updated tax statistics bulletin was issued jointly this week by the National Treasury and SARS. To discuss all of this and other factors relating to the economy, we're joined by economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SPG, in our weekly slot of the economy. Professor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Let's first take a look at the week and the basic numbers that came out. What are some of the latest statistics telling us that you could observe?
Well, I think, Elvis, as you will recall, this is familiar ground that we have to traverse every now and again, especially these high-frequency data, which give you some idea of where this economy is going. And I think the weak figures on credit and the motor car sales are telling us we're still bumping along the bottom of the economy. We're into slightly positive growth, but we must understand that there's quite a steep hill we'll have to climb next year. Some of the omens are good, some are not. So it's a mixed picture. We'll have to keep an eye on it. And of course, there are other background noises that will be quite important for how these figures perform. So I would say, really, there's nothing unexpected. It is just confirmation of a weak outlook which might get better next year.
Let's follow up on the latest export and import trade data. The cumulative deficit for the year narrowed to 14.3 billion rand. That is from 59.9 billion over the same period in 2015. What is the message here, Prof?
I think this is a piece of good news in the sense that over time, our trade deficit, that's our ability to pay our way in the world basically, has been improving gradually. We see that exports are beginning to respond to the weaker rand over time. Our imports are falling. That, of course, is not such good news. They are, of course, more expensive. But the other part is, if we're not importing capital equipment, it means we're not growing and investing as rapidly as we should. So these are volatile numbers. One mustn't read too much into 1 month. It's also one of those high-frequency data that you have to see unfold over time. But my overall impression is we are nudging towards a narrower, worrying deficit on our trade account, and that's a positive.
Now, we often talk about the fluctuations in the perceptions of business confidence in the country. But what might be the major factors presently driving the levels of business or investor confidence in the country?
Well, why this is important, because among economists we talk about business people's animal spirits. We want them to be up and going, investing, creating jobs. So when we look at the levels of confidence, this is important. And at the moment they are not very strong. And I think what's important here is something we've also discussed, Elvis, before, to draw a distinction between business confidence and investor confidence. Now, business confidence is more of a daily thing. You open your shop, office or factory and you close at the end of the day and you deal with whatever has to be done, even if you're not in a good mood. But the investor confidence is a much more longer term thing. Do I want to expand my factory, office or shop in the future? Do I see the market growing? Do I see the prospects of growth? And do I see policy stability on which I can base my predictable decisions? Now, I think that's the hurdle we still have to jump, and that's why these indices are really quite important when they feed into our assessment of the business mood, and in particular the willingness and the capacity of South African business and indeed foreign business to take a longer view and say, this is an economy we want to invest in and create jobs.
How does business perception and policy uncertainty, how do those juxtapose against each other?
Well, I think really it's like a seesaw in the sense that if there's too much policy uncertainty, then you find that business decisions, but particularly investment decisions, I can't stress that enough. Investment decisions are the ones we have to nurture. And we want them to take a more positive view of South Africa's future. This is also largely what the debate is all about with our credit rating agencies. They too have stipulated that one of the important issues is to give more policy certainty to business people as a basis on which they can invest. And for that, you must understand that uncertainty and confidence are two sides of the same coin.
Now, the latest tax statistics bulletin reveals a number of interesting trends, ranging from the drop in corporate tax take to the fact that tax buoyancy generally seems to still be quite good thanks to tax hikes and improved compliance. On the other hand, the Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, complained in Parliament this week of a lack of accountability and cooperation from SARS. What does this all mean for the main budget, especially 2017 next year?
Well, I think, Elvis, I've been saying, how do we cut the Gordian knot, if I could pardon? And this has been going on for some time. What has been announced now is that because of certain perceptions around SARS, the Minister of Finance has asked the Davis Committee to extend its mandate and to look very specifically at the governance of SARS. You know, we've had a very good track record in our tax collection, but some of the recent developments have put a question mark on how sustainable is that, because actually as we will see, our tax revenues have held up reasonably well within the context of a weak economy, but we want to be sure that that instrument of tax collection is as efficient as it can be. But that doesn't take away from the important challenges that the Minister of Finance will face in February in the main budget. Although the tax revenues may be looking a little better, once again, how sustainable is it? There is a fiscal gap that is already indicated that has to be met in that budget. As I've indicated to you before, Elvis, in the mini budget, the one shoe dropped about government spending and about how much we can borrow, safely borrow. Now the issue is how much of the gap must you fill with an increase in taxes. I think the important point here is just to bear in mind that 2/3 of the adjustment is supposed to come out of tax. I think that's a little too high. We've got to be very careful that whatever tax decisions we take don't indeed push us from the frying pan into the fire. So I think it's going to be a very interesting prior debate before the budget on what would be the right tax mix for South Africa in say, 2017.
Last weekend, we were shocked by some moods by Moody's and Fitch to leave South Africa's basic investment grading unchanged, but it was coupled with negative warnings on the outlook. Of course, they've nonetheless given South Africa another 6 months to get our house in order. But S&P, Standard & Poor, is on our doorstep, and they're going to make that decision tonight, we believe. And we'll know by tomorrow where we stand. Will we be more standard or poor tomorrow, Professor?
I think there's a lot of speculation about that. There are some views that say, well, they may go the same way as, for example, Moody's, have a strong narrative, but stay with the rating, because they don't have much room to maneuver. They are on just one notch above junk status on a negative outlook. So where do they go from there, given what's happened in South Africa in the past few months, both from an economic and a political point of view? There's been both good news and bad news. The second is they are now the third one to report. And just recall that 2 weeks ago, they further downgraded our state-owned enterprise Eskom into junk status further. So it looks as if they're taking quite a strong line. But I think we'll have to wait and see. They may well feel that we should be given some more time. I just want to make the point that we've got to use this time wisely. It's the second or third time that we've had this extension. It is less of a reprieve than it will be a warning, or whatever the decision is. And I also think we've got to reach the point where we take the right decisions and break out of this mold that every 6 months we have an agony session as to what is going to happen, because that's not good for business or investor confidence. We want to see progress be made where you would actually say, I'm looking forward to their visit, not I fear it. And I think if we can get to that level, then I think we've made a lot of progress over the next year or so.
And it's not just about policy certainty, it's also about political certainty, I would imagine. But Professor, we're at the end of 2016. It's been a tough year for South Africa, but there's well some ups and downs as well. But finally, in your last interview for 2016, your final thoughts.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Now, let me put it to you in two parts. The one I think I've said before, usually at this time of the year, because we've had a couple of roller coaster years in South Africa, both politically and economically. I would say, I've again sent Father Christmas an email. Please send me a new crystal ball. The one I've got has got rather cracked as a result of all these developments. And when I come back next year, I want to be able to look clearly into that crystal ball. The second is to say to everyone, look, when we come back next year, let's hope each one of us has taken a New Year resolution that we want to make a difference. If we want an economy in which there will be more shared prosperity and, above all, a better year than we've had this year. And if we can do that, then I think we've got a positive message to build on next year.
Professor, Newsroom, myself, would like to thank you for your contributions during the course of the year, and will continue next year with probably more positivity in our economy.
Thanks for the opportunity.
That was Professor Raymond Parsons from the Business School, of course, in the Northwest, giving us the latest, the economist, Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SPG. This is our weekly slot, The Economy, the final one for the year. You have to stay tuned.
Moving away from the economy and taking a look at news from the courts, the Western Cape High Court is set to hear an application for an interdict by the SABC's only remaining board member, Professor Mbolaheni Magube, today. He's seeking to stop an inquiry into the Public Broadcasters Board by Parliament's ad hoc committee headed by ANC MP Vincent Smith. Magube launched the application on Monday, but Judge Siraj Desai ruled that it would be heard today. This prevented the ad hoc committee from starting with its investigation into the fitness of the SABC board to hold office, which was scheduled for Tuesday this week. Now, Mugabe has argued in court papers that the ad hoc committee won't give him a fair and impartial hearing. The Democratic Alliance, however, says it will be in court to oppose Mugabe's application. The party says it will argue for the inquiry to go ahead in order to restore the integrity of the public broadcaster. The bail applications of two men who allegedly forced a man into a coffin and threatened to set him alight are expected to continue in the Middelburg Magistrates Court today. Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martin Jackson allegedly beat farm worker Victor Mhlotwa before forcing him into the coffin. Proceedings were postponed yesterday because the defense failed to complete its cross-examination. The suspects face charges of assault after allegedly beating the farm worker Victor Mhlotwa. The incident was recorded on a cell phone and it went viral earlier this month. Yesterday, investigating officer Demakatso Bahule opposed the bail application due to threats by residents of Middelburg. Now, we are asking you this poll question today. Should the coffin case accused get bail today? And so far, 81% of voters are saying no. No, they should not get bail today. Moving to other news, the SABC Group CE for Corporate Affairs, Hlaudi Motsweneng, has addressed an ANC Youth League gathering in Durban. The theme of the event was economic freedom.
When I was acting COO of the SABC, when I arrived at the SABC, you know, SABC has been led by many people who are qualified educationally, so doctors, professors, and so on and so on. But when I came, SABC was under government guarantee. When I came, in the bank we were having around 200 million rands in a bank. I turned SABC around, it was sitting at 1.4 billion rands without those certificates.
Today is the deadline for the NPA to file additional papers in the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. This is relating to the appeal of convicted murderer Oscar Pistorius against his jail sentence. Now, the High Court in Pretoria earlier denied the NPA leave to appeal the 6-year sentence. The sentence was imposed on the former Paralympian for killing his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp more than 3 years ago. The SCA has already ruled that litigants will have to argue in an open court for and against the application for the leave to appeal. Judge Thokozile Mapisa sentenced Pistorius for a second time after his initial conviction of culpable homicide was overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal, and this was converted to murder. The NPA has argued that the High Court has misdirected itself in finding that the aggravating factors in the case were outweighed by the mitigating factors. Those are your top news stories for this hour. We will bring you a full news bulletin again at 11 o'clock. But for now, it's time to go over to Eben to continue our discussion on Fidel Castro. We will continue that a little bit later, but first let's take a break.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Nature continues to wreak havoc in some parts of the country, this time around in KwaZulu-Natal.
16-year-old Nhlaka and 19-year-old Sine Themba were both hit by lightning. They were asleep inside this rondavel, their home completely gutted.
It's very difficult. I wish it was me who died instead of my children.
In Alexandra, north of Johannesburg, another distraught family, 4 days on, and the Chauke family is still clinging on to hope that the body of their 3-year-old daughter will be found. The search for a Pretoria woman who disappeared after a vehicle was swept away by floods continues. She was driving over the Apis River with her son.
Paperwork. Where is your Give me that paperwork. Where is your paperwork?
I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair, Santa Basietan. Not fair.
Who puts a rent 200? I have to put like 200. 150, 150 plus. Another one, 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes, you just want to lock me then out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No! No!
Yeah, welcome back. A very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, we're celebrating the life and times of the late, great Fidel Castro, be laid to rest in Santiago de Cuba on Sunday. Of course, South Africa's president will be there and a whole host of other dignitaries. Now, to watch the funeral cortege that's been, well, growing through the streets of Sancti Spiritus over the last day or so. People been carrying the remains of the Cuban revolutionary leader. The cortege now is expected to arrive tomorrow at the final resting place of his ashes in Santiago de Cuba.
The Cuban capital, Havana, is a far cry from the vibrant atmosphere that it's known for. People are observing the 9-day mourning period declared after the death of Fidel Castro. A fierce critic of the West, the charismatic Castro is credited with ensuring free access to health and education for its people. A lesson for a country like South Africa.
There's a lot that you can learn from Cuba because Cuba prioritized health and education. Because there's no country that can survive if we don't have educated people. So Cuba today is surviving. It's because most Cubans are educated.
The island state has also been lauded for its humanitarian work in Africa. Cuban doctors were among the first to be dispatched to West Africa to contain the outbreak of the Ebola virus. South Africa remains indebted to Cuba's contribution to improve the lives of ordinary people. And various delegations will attend the funeral service. The importance of Cuba to South Africa is perhaps illustrated by the outpouring of support since the announcement of the death of Fidel Castro was made, with President Jacob Zuma having led the nation in paying tribute by addressing a mass rally here in Havana. Many other political parties from the country and parliamentarians are expected to attend the funeral on Sunday. Mzwandile Mbeje, SABC News, Havana, Cuba.
Of course, we're counting down to the funeral on Sunday, so we've asked you the question, what are the key lesson or the key lessons that you've learned from the life of the great revolutionary leader Fidel Castro? Let's take a look at some of the ideas you're sending in to us. This one from Big Tabang. Tabang Balang. I like that, Tabang. He says, Fidel Castro, if Americans hate you, just know you are doing the right thing. People liberate themselves, says Tabang. This one from Khoisan Shai Shai. He says, Newsroom, South African revolutionary leaders should have done what Comrade Fidel Castro has done and never compromised with the oppressors. Interesting. Lechasa comes, he says, the late Fidel Castro was a true revolutionary leader who fought for equality in Cuba, like I do, at ZB Mokopong. That's obviously where Lechasa lives. Unati says he was a true leader and he loved his people and his home language. Interesting take there, Unati. Keep it coming, guys. Of course, on Sunday night, South African time, Fidel Castro will be laid to rest. It'll be live on this very channel, of course, attended by South African President Jacob Zuma and a whole host of other dignitaries from around the world. Now, because today we're facing another downgrade, aren't we? But is this all genuine? Is it all real? Now, the five-nation group BRICS, yes, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have agreed to set up an independent ratings agency now based on market-orientated principles, saying it would further strengthen global governance architecture. Now, for more on this, we spoke to economist George Glynis. He's the CEO at ETM Analytics. We started off by asking him what he thinks of the idea of a BRICS ratings agency.
It's going to be a ratings agency that will have no credibility, because it will be a ratings agency put together by the very people that it's going to monitor. And I just don't see the independence in that at all. It's not going to be looked at or taken seriously. And ultimately, what would be the point, other than perhaps a marketing spin of sorts by the BRICS countries? No foreign investor worth their salt is going to pay attention to that rating at all. They will continue to utilize the tried and tested ratings agencies that they've always used, because they're independent of state influence, and they are therefore going to be trusted with the outcome that they put forward, as opposed to a BRICS funded and related and influenced ratings agency, which no one is going to look at as a potential credible source of information on these countries.
What more can we do as a country to avoid a downgrade?
Well, I think more of what, so the messages that we've been getting from the finance minister and the deputy president more recently, I think are the right messages to send. There's messages of cooperation, there's messages of government working together with labour, working together with business. We like to see efforts being made on the part of government and business to work together with the labour unions, because then at least we perhaps progress to a point where there are fewer labour disruptions that take place. We like the idea that they are wanting to promote small business. We think that's good, although we're waiting for the implementation. Effectively, the 9-point plan that government has put forward is something that we would want to see implemented to a greater degree. There is likely to be some positive feedback if government gets it right to ultimately implement all of these things. Therein lies the big question mark, because up until now, that's been what's lacking. And so we wait for proof. And I think where the ratings agency stand is probably a very similar position, where they're going to wait to see whether the implementation of these so-called reforms is going to have any positive influence on the GDP numbers. If it does, that will probably offer South Africa a stay of execution, if you like, in terms of the downgrade for another 6 to 12 months. But at this point, it's difficult to see that is in fact going to be the case. I'm a little bit cynical in terms of government's efforts, just because they haven't covered themselves in glory over the past few years. And ultimately, the core view for the time being is still one where South Africa progresses towards a downgrade. It just might not happen as soon as this year, purely because of the efforts that have been made more recently.
Just lastly, to just add on to what you've been saying, do you see a possibility of a downgrade in the future?
I do see a possibility of a downgrade. Look, it's possible that we can avoid it. One thing that I think would help South Africa significantly would be if we started talking about privatizations, or at least partial privatizations. When one has a look at how Telkom has performed, for example, and the really decent results that were released recently, one can see how a state-owned enterprise can in fact become a very profitable, well-run institution that continues to offer the South African economy its goods and services. And yet it doesn't need a bailout. It contributes positively to the fiscus, contributes positively to the stability of the sector in which it's trading. And I think we need to use telecom as an example of what we should be doing with the likes of SAA, possibly with the likes of Eskom, Transnet, SABC, and other state-owned enterprises that up until recently have had their financial troubles.
The last of the three rating agencies will deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. Standard & Poor rates the country only one notch above sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status, and that is with a negative outlook. The other two ratings agencies, Fitch and Moody's, gave the country a reprieve last week when they left South Africa's credit rating unchanged at 2 notches above junk status, although Fitch cut its outlook to negative because of low growth and political risk, they say. Now, with S&P's ratings outlook already negative, there's a possibility that the next move will be a downgrade. Now, to unpack today's ratings, in fact tonight's, because it's going to be tonight's rating, it will the timing it would be, and what it will mean for our economy of the country. We're now joined by in studio by Siba Motata, the Chief Economist at Investment Solutions. Siba, very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
How's it, Tom?
Mr. Motata, firstly, we survived the first two ratings agencies, and of course we got a sort of a negative from them, but what are the chances of surviving this one because we're so close to junk status?
There's a greater chance that we may. There are a few technicalities around Standard & Poor's that ought to be considered, in that they have a very different rating on the debt that's issued in local currency, in other words in rands, which is about 90%. They have us firmly in investment grade in that measure. And the remaining 10%, which is in dollars, in foreign currency, that's what we call the so-called junk.
Yes.
Only 10% of it, it's almost at that cusp of being put into junk status. It really is a tough one here, because we risk two things.
Yes, what is that?
One, they could pull down that local denominated currency rating to match that of foreign currency ratings, or they can move lockstep, both of them down, which will push us into non-investment grade. On a balance of probabilities, I think we'll be okay, but we really just survive in this outcome. Yeah.
Now, if we do get downgraded, right, what will it mean for the country's economy? Is it doom and gloom?
You know, at this point in time, the markets have not factored in a downgrades in terms of how you look at the currency moves stronger, despite a stronger dollar.
Yes.
Also, we have seen in bond markets, they're actually stable, around 9%. Now, if it were to happen, there will be a sell-off. The rand will sell off. Bond markets will sell off. It will cause a tightening of policy, in that cost of borrowing will go up. The work that is done by the South African Reserve Bank shows that you may find that borrowing costs can go up by a percentage point in the interim. What we've seen, however, in emerging market countries is that there's a normal sell-off, but there's a V-shaped recovery thereafter, depending on how authorities respond. I'm just a little conscious now. I'm very concerned that we are lulled, so to speak. I don't think we are ready for a junk status as yet, and if it were to happen, it could prove to be very negative.
Because being a junk is not a good thing, but what does it mean for ordinary South Africans?
What it means is that the cost of borrowing money could go up.
Yes.
Which means if you have a debt, you have a house, you have a car, you have a credit card, you may find that you're beginning to pay a lot more. And it pushes the cost of borrowing structurally higher until we come back to investment grade. So it's not only an initial shock. It can last 5, 6, 7 years until we come back to investment grade. So it is not desired. And each time Standard & Poor's speak about South Africa, they'll reinforce your junk, and that could run for a good 7 years. Psychologically, it will dampen consumer confidence. It will also dampen already depressed business confidence. It's not a desired outcome, but I still have hope that we are not there yet in terms of the economic constructs. So if one were to ask, does South Africa have the ability to pay on time?
Because that's really what it's all about.
Can you pay on time and in full? The answer is yes. What about the political things? What about what's happening in terms of low growth? It's concerning. But it's not commensurate to what we have seen, for example, in Hungary. 5 years ago, they needed an IMF bailout. There was a banking crisis. The economic situation was much dire than what we find in SA. Admittedly, only last month they came back into investment grade, which was 5 years for them. And it can prove very difficult. But when you look at what has happened in emerging market countries, and you look at what's going on in South Africa and around this junk status, what we find is that we're not quite there. The dire situation is not commensurate to that we've seen elsewhere.
The finance minister called it political noise that we need to watch out for. But President Jacob Zuma has raised concerns that these rating agencies are somehow biased, especially the three. And therefore, the BRICS nations is working to establish its own rating agency. What do you make of that? Will that perhaps balance the equilibrium here?
The BRICS Development Bank or the BRICS ratings that can come as a result of this cooperation of the BRICS countries, you know what? It was China within the BRICS that said, careful. What is the desired outcome? We just need to think about how practical it could prove. Not quite there yet. I don't think the ratings, because you need to, first they're solicited. So you solicit from Standard & Poor's to rate you, and you pay them for that work. But, and it has credibility in that it has been established for a very long time. And they do have criteria that they're looking at. I just think it's a bit premature to talk about a ratings agency for BRIC countries. They exist already. Like China has its own rating. And for some time, Russia has been trying to put together one. When we put all 4 countries, will it now work? I still have my doubts whether it's still the time for it.
Very briefly, we're running out of time. Your final thoughts on Standard & Poor's, their decision tonight.
Keep it unchanged in terms of non-investment grade, so we become investment grade, but they may move on the local debt to downgrade us from that perspective.
Sir, I thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, that was Lesiba Montata, the Chief Economist at Investment Solutions, giving us his take on that investment downgrade, or perhaps not, later tonight. We'll tell you more about it on Monday or even tomorrow, which is Saturday.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the man who takes the party from zero to hero, from bland to grand, from average to, well, to way above average. The guy who toots the party train horn and says, "All aboard!" You are indeed a party comrade, and we salute you with a bottle of Chivas Regal 12-year-old blended Scotch whiskey, plus 2 glasses for just $279.99, exclusive to Tops at Spa.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Morning, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamata. I've got your sports. Now, South Africa have kicked off their 2016-2017 World Rugby 7 season with an impressive performance. The Blitzboks scored 8 tries to beat Uganda 46-0 in their opening match of the Dubai leg of the series. Their next match is against the United States, who lost to Scotland in their opening match of the tournament. Kickoff is just after 11 a.m. South African time. Now, here's some of the highlights of that match against Uganda.
Floating pass, Africa, Depria, and now Sinatla. Here is Werner Kok, in, away, Werner Kok! What a start, South Africa! World Rugby Player of the Year 2014-2015, and he's on the score sheet first for his country. They did well to bring him down, the flyer. Now Brown, he's got a kick pass across, and out there is the captain, and he has got a double. Philip Snyman, good vision. The old captain to the new captain. Try time. 19-0. That's the lead at half-time. And they kick off. And the Cranes unable to control that one. So Quagga Smith, who's off the bench, picks it up. Great field position. And the penalty goes to South Africa. Werner Kok takes it quickly, gives it to Hadold, and over to Sinatla. And Siabalo Sinatla has his first try for Dubai 2016. Nori Hashimoto, the referee from Japan. Like so many of the teams, we've got so many new faces in the referee panel for the HSBC Sevens World Series this year. So congratulations to all of them who have been promoted. Philip Walker actually needed support then. Arrived too late, so they set it up again. Big tackle from Werner Kok, forcing the turnover. Quagga Smith gets the beautiful ball away to Ruardel, and he will run away and score another one for the Blitzboks.
Right, now American Jamie Holmes is top of the leaderboard after round 1 of the Hero World Challenge at 8 under par. South Africa's Louis Oosthuizen is tied 4th, 3 shots from the leader. The host, Tiger Woods, was the main talking point amongst the elite 18-man field as he made his return to competitive golf for the first time in nearly 16 months. Woods made a sizzling of 73 as he mixed 4 birdies and a single bogey on the front 9, but then fell back, ending up with a 73.
I feel good. As I was telling the deal there, is that I felt the feel of the round by the second hole of the tee shot, and I could feel the round, and that was nice. And once I got into the feel of the round, I got off to a nice start. I was 4 under par there for a little bit. Unfortunately, hit the ball in 3 bushes and had a water ball. So consequently, I let a really good round slip away at the end.
Charles Schwartzel has a share of the lead after the opening round of the Alfred Dunhill Championship at Leopard Creek in Malelane. The defending champion shot a flawless 6 under par 66 to top the day 1, alongside Ireland's Paul Dunn.
Wherever you looked on the leaderboard, there were South Africans draining putts. Jean Hugo finished day 1, 1 shot off the leaders with a 5 under 67. Thanks in large part to 4 birdies in a row from the 13th through 16th holes. 67 was a popular score, with South African Open champion Brandon Stone also going to 5 under. Stone had the clubhouse lead for the better part of the day after the morning session, and he'll be one to keep an eye on.
I didn't really strike the ball that well, but I kept it in play the whole time. I wasn't really in the trouble too much, and I hold some brilliant putts. I missed on the last, but you can't have them all, I guess.
Paul Dunn, the Irishman, recovered from a disastrous double bogey on the 9th to birdie every other hole on the back 9 and take a surprise 1-shot lead on 6 under. It was up to the man who doesn't seem to put a foot wrong at Leopard Creek, although he could do with a bit more luck at times, to keep the South African flag at the top of the leaderboard. Schwartzel is the defending champion. He's also looking to win the tournament for a 5th time. He signed for a flawless 6 under 66, joining Dunn as co-leader after the opening day. Simon Burke, SABC News.
More than one person said that.
Now moving from west through to east, bad weather has caused havoc with Australian PGA, the second event of the European Tour taking place this weekend. Wind and heavy rain prevented the first round from being completed, and many players faced early morning alarms, so they would have to finish their first rounds before getting the second underway. That, however, didn't seem to bother local player Ashley Hall too much. He signed for a 65 in his first round before going back out again to complete his second. He completed that in 69 despite a horrible triple bogey on the fourth, his 13th. Hall is now 10 under par, 2 behind the lead held by fellow Australian Andrew Dutt. He was one of the last players out on the course today, but he had a flawless round until the very last hole. He carded 6 birdies before dropping that shot for a tournament total of 12 under par. And Banyana have one last chance to come back home with a medal from the 2016 CAF Women's African Cup of Nations in Cameroon. After being knocked out in the semi-final of the tournament by current champions Nigeria 2 days ago, the Desiree Ellis Chargers clash with Ghana in the bronze medal match later today.
It was a disappointing result for us, but performance-based we did extremely well, and I think we're going to carry that same performance and a little bit more into the Ghana game, because I feel that this team deserves a bronze medal. Well, actually gold, but we can't go for gold anymore. So we will try and do everything that we can to go home with a bronze medal around our necks.
Going to the Ghana game, we honestly have to play hard to give in good results, and also leave a mark, especially here in Cameroon, because everyone has been saying we've been playing well, so it's up to us tomorrow to leave a mark.
Yeah, let's hope they actually do leave that mark tonight when they face off against Ghana. Now, the disciplinary hearing involving suspended Bafana Bafana coach Shakes Mashaba has been postponed to next week. Mashaba has requested more time to prepare his case. The head of security at Safa House was instructed to ask the SABC crew covering the story to leave Safa House while proceedings were in progress. Mashaba arrived at Safa House for his disciplinary hearing, accompanied by his daughter and legal representative. Some of the charges of the coach that he faces include bringing the Football Association into disrepute, frequent confrontations with the media, insubordination, as well as misconduct. Mashaba also refused to shake hands with Safa officials who wanted to congratulate him after the 2-1 victory over Senegal in a World Cup qualifier in Polokwane last month. The suspended coach also had an argument with his Safa bosses inside the tunnel, and this is viewed by his employers as misconduct. And that's where we leave it on that note. We'll be back with more a little later. In fact, in the next hour, we'll be bringing you a little bit of an update on what's going on with the Chapo Kowenze fallen and the preparations for their funerals. We're going to have a look at the weather before we come back with news at the top of the hour.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's take a look at that weather. Southern Africa, well, we're expecting a hot and a sunny one throughout South Africa's central interior as well as the western interior there. That continues into other parts of Southern Africa, but for the most part, seeing just a little bit of cloud cover, some rainfall coming in. You can see a lot of that around South Africa's northeastern areas there. Progressing into tomorrow, it really concentrates itself over the northern regions there of Southern Africa and towards the eastern coastline as well. Not much rainfall to speak of whatsoever for South Africa. This is all due to higher pressure systems, and as we progress into our second day of official summer now, we begin to see some very, very hot temperatures. Uppington's at 41 degrees Celsius, a very hot one indeed there, and a 29-degree high for Cape Town means temperatures warming there as well. Now, it continues to warm as we look towards Beitbridge there, 47 degrees. Now, it is an absolute scorcher there, of course, very, very high heat, and we also have a dry one there, so veld fire conditions are present in some areas around this heat wave here. Bulawayo is at 37 degrees Celsius, and moving further north, what we're going to see is temperatures continuing very, very warm, especially around the Bangui area here. Despite all of the rainfall moving through that central interior, we're continuing to see warm conditions, at least for the west anyway. Towards the east, though, slightly cooler conditions, and we are going to see storms progressing through that central interior as well. Some rather heavy rainfall forecast for that interior too. Kigali is at 25 degrees, Nairobi 24. But as we move west, you can see that those temperatures are definitely staying high there. 37 degrees in Bangui, and of course temperatures in the central interior all remain warm throughout the change of season. Now it is becoming very, very cold as we look towards the far northern regions, especially around the Middle Eastern's northern regions. You can see low pressure systems strong in that area, and they're bringing in a lot of rainfall and some cold conditions as well. Progressing into tomorrow, a very similar condition there, with some rainfall over Port Sudan, some rainfall over Cairo as well. In terms of your temperatures, well, Baghdad's at 8 degrees and Damascus 13. So you can really see the effect of those low pressure systems, those cold fronts coming through, cloud cover throughout the northern coastlines of Africa here, and hot conditions as usual continuing in Al Fajr in the interior. So that's the effects of the low pressure system. You can see another one coming in though, very strong, moving towards Rabat, Marrakesh, the surrounding areas. No rainfall there as yet. We are seeing cloud cover coming in, but the rainfall should still take a day or two to get to that area as that low pressure system progresses towards the general area there. Rabat at 22 and Algiers at 19, and you can see that cloud cover forecast for the area. Now this is where we're going to leave your weather for now, but don't hesitate to contact us. Weather at SABC is our email address, today, of course, being South Africa. 011-714-5077 is the number to call. That's where we leave it for now. Have yourself a great weekend.
And poverty did not deter Mpumi's success.
Being an orphan or coming from poverty or having seen what HIV and AIDS does to a person that you love takes nothing away from you. It means that you are part of a selective few who have had to face a very, very marginalized struggle.
Abuse is a lonely journey that needs compassion.
I came across as a very confident, ambitious person, but behind that mask was somebody who had serious anxiety problems, a person who had knots in their stomach continuously, a person who could be in company and would feel very lonely.
Being away from his birth country did not stop his hunger to succeed.
Boxing was the way out. Turning professional would give me an income. That was the solution to the problems I've had for so many years.
For more inspiring stories, join Bupulong every Friday at 17:30.
What was, the week like in terms of CITES?
I saw there was a news insert about there being genetically engineered sort of rhino horns that have been introduced now. And then that has sort of now been rejected. They're saying that it's sort of going to promote poaching as per se.
The concern that's been raised by law enforcement in that particular regard has been that how do you distinguish between the original and the fake?
Yes.
Because it's going to make it difficult to police.
The rhino horn is the same quality as the nail. If you want something from the rhino horn, just cut your nail and do whatever. What was most striking for me was how the pangolin came into the picture. That was interesting for me because a few years ago in Zimbabwe, if you found a pangolin and you handed it over, you would have an audience with the president.
Wow.
Yeah, and you would be given a certain amount of money. And
wow.
Once that program started, almost every week there was somebody who was getting an audience with the president.
It's the last day of the week. It's Friday today. Yes, it's the 2nd of December 2016. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Bakamate.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we focus on the late Cuban president, Fidel Castro, who's been described as the greatest leader of the 20th century, who dedicated his entire life to building a better life for all. Humanity, that is. Our question for the day, we're asking you, what lessons have you learned from Fidel Castro's life? So let's take a look at what you have to say on the Twitter handle, as well as on the Facebook page. On the Twitter handle, this one from Tabang, Kendall.
He says, if Americans hate you, just know that you're doing the right thing. People liberate themselves. Very interesting, very polarized view there.
Interesting take. Khoisan Kai Kai says, South African revolutionary leaders should have done what Comrade Fidel Castro has done and never compromise with the oppressors. So says Khoisan.
Likhasa Patlamolo, our never failing, always commenting Likhasa. The late Fidel Castro was a true revolutionary leader. He fought for equality in Cuba like I do at ZB Makopo.
So says Likhasa. Those are some of your comments. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue during the course of the day. But we're also running a poll today. We're conducting that poll on the question of the coffin case accused and whether or not they should get bail. What do you have to say? Let's see.
We've got 189 votes, a few more of them from the last hour, Elvis. And just to remind you, should the coffin case accused get bail today is our question. And as you can see, Elvis, 20% say yes, they should get bail. But the big one, 80% saying no way.
Yeah, well, it's going to come out of the coffin a little bit later, but we'll keep you abreast of that story. Let's take a look at some of your comments on this particular issue, because you're also tweeting on this issue. Madisa says, hell no, what for? They deserve to be denied bail, says Mandisa. Very strong view there.
And I think all the views are going to be strong. Unati Grootboom says they must forget about desserts and braai meat and prepare for Christmas in jail.
Yeah, no, you can't have a dessert in Christmas. Lachasa says the coffin case suspect should not get any bail. The suspect should spend the festive season behind bars. Finish and clear. Now remember who said that at one stage, right?
We do remember that.
Well, that's what we have for you. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital Trust has finally opened its doors. The last of the 3 rating agencies is expected to deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. And DNA results have confirmed that the remains found in Buccleuch along the Yexke River on November the 22nd are those of the 3-year-old Everite Chauke. Sad note there, but before we get to the news, let's find out what's happening on the sports field with Kendall Makamate. And Tiger is coming out of the woods, isn't he?
Yeah, Tiger Woods coming out of the woods. We hope that he does, because I mean, a lot of people have been looking forward to his comeback. It's been 15, 16 months in the making.
Yeah.
And now he's finally playing.
Yeah.
And with that said, good morning to you. This is what he had to say about his performance yesterday in the first round. Now, it seems as if Tiger Woods says he feels good, even though getting off to a brilliant start, he falters in the final 10 holes as he makes his long-awaited comeback to competitive golf. We also are bringing you news of how football's great latest tragic week comes to an end as the coffins of the Chapecoense team that perished in the Colombian air crash get prepared. And of course, South Africa's Blitzbokkers got their 2016-2017 season off to a perfect start as they obliterated Minnows Uganda by 46 points to 0 in Dubai. In a few minutes' time, in fact, round about now, the Blitzbokkers should be kicking off against the United States, and we'll be bringing you an update of what happened in that match later on the Sports Bulletin at 11:35. For now, though, it is back to Elvis with Got the News.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. DNA results have confirmed that the remains found in Buccleuch along the Yexke River on November the 22nd are those of 3-year-old Everite Chauke. The toddler from the Alexandra township drowned during fatal flash floods in Gauteng at the beginning of this month. This prompted an extensive search that lasted over 2 weeks. Police spokesperson Kay Makubela says they are happy that the child has been identified. Well, we're going to come back to that story to show you some of the visuals and some of the stories that came out of that. The Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital will today officially open its doors in Parkview, north of Johannesburg. The hospital's official opening comes 3 days before the 3rd anniversary of the passing of the former President Nelson Mandela, whose wish has finally been fulfilled. The hospital will start admitting its first patients early next year. It has state-of-the-art equipment and medical specialists. Hospital CEO Sibongile Mkabela says that 1.4 billion rand was raised to build the institution. She says additional funding came from ordinary South Africans. SABC News senior anchor Leanne Manners spoke to the Gauteng Health MEC, Kodani Mahlangu, about the official launch of the Mandela Children's Hospital.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, coming to you live from the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital here in Parktown North in Johannesburg. It's absolutely fantastic to have been a part of this. And I must just tell you that since the early hours of this morning, guests have been arriving and they've been coming into this facility. And the feeling has been incredible. People have just been walking in, looking around and just realizing that they are a part of a dream that was envisioned 11 years ago by our late former President Nelson Mandela, and here it is officially being launched just a few days before South Africa looks back on the life and times of Nelson Mandela. 3 years since his passing, and that of course is on the 5th of December. But having a conversation with everybody that's been involved in this has been very heartwarming. I mean, the hard work that's gone into raising the funds. Now you'll remember that it was around about R1 billion that they were trying to raise for this, but they're just 200 million short of it, so the fundraising is still underway. But we have a structure, we have a hospital, it is there, it is ready to work. But obviously next year we should see the official opening taking place, where they will be admitting their very first patient. Well, joining me now to talk a little bit more about this is the Gauteng MEC of Health, Kodani Mahlangu. It's always a pleasure to see you, but I think today even more so, because this is what healthcare in South Africa should look like, shouldn't it?
We're really excited, Leanne. I mean, it's been heartwarming to have seen the project from 2009 when the first sorting happened to see it today being completed. Indeed, this is going to be our benchmark going forward. It's just been incredible.
Yeah. And it's so important because when you look at the continent, I think there are only 4 children's hospitals on the continent, this being the 5th. There is one in Cape Town, but this now being in... Yeah, so this is the 2nd in South Africa, but it's set to help also others in Sub-Saharan.
Yes, it's the 2nd best, of course. It may be the 5th in Africa, but I think that's the best out of them all. And we're really excited about this because the services that are going to be provided are very specialized services. I think we can only say this is really a benchmark from all round, from infrastructure to medical care to everything else. And I think we're simply saying to the continent and the world, watch out. And I think South Africa and Gauteng in particular, we're very excited the fact about the different donors who really put every cent into this for us to have this building to serve the children of Sub-Saharan Africa. You know that the health systems in different parts of the Sub-Saharan Africa have a lot of challenges. As things stand now, we've got a lot of challenges that we're facing in the public health sector in Gauteng. People coming here to collect ARVs, including for children. And I think this is going to go a long way just to serve the much-needed service, provide the much-needed services to the Sub-Saharan Africa, but in particular to South Africans and Gauteng in particular.
Do you have any idea of how the hospital is going to work when it comes to, and these are a couple of questions that I've been seeing coming through on Twitter, in terms of whether it be a private facility, a public facility, for those that can't afford it, how is this going to help the people of South Africa and the most needy?
It's a public hospital, and there's no medical aid. People are going to get services for free as they're getting them from the other public hospitals. And of course, the other a very important thing that is unique from all other hospitals, the family lodges, as well as the fact that in the ward, a mother will be accommodated to deal with this thing. So from a service provision point of view, all citizens of our country who deserve, but it's not a walk-in hospital. No. It's a hospital that we are referred. As you know, Charlotte Maxeke is just casting our our eyes away from here. You've got the Krisani Baragwanath and all other hospitals. So there's been working mechanisms of referral that has been worked here, and that is going to include, of course, the rest of South Africa as to what are the things, when should children be referred here, and at what point in time, because you also have other services being provided in the different academic hospitals. From a teaching point of view, the pediatrics and those who want to specialize in child-specific, whether it's oncology or cardiology, those again are being offered an additional opportunity to train here and to specialize and to children from here.
Okay, so it's a referral hospital. It is a public hospital. These are very important facts that we need to know. In terms of the different kinds of care that a child can get here, what care is covered in this hospital? I mean, what I'm gathering is it's across the board. I mean, it's anything that any child is going through is able to get treated here.
Specialized care, oncology, remember this is about oncology is about cancer, heart-related conditions that are very complicated, and as well as there's issues relating to a lung called pulmonology services, that when a child has got challenges with lungs and whatever, all of those. So there's specialized services that are going to be provided here, and there's about 7 or 8 centers of excellence that are going to be providing here. And I think the other important thing is that there's a lot of other hospitals. One of the board members was telling me that they're working with the Canada Children's Hospital, who's also looking at this model, and they say even in Canada they don't have a hospital like this, even in Australia. So it's going to bring a lot of international expertise, as well as, of course, people learning from us, but also learning from them. And I think one exciting thing here is that the Lollipop radio station, which probably is the first in Africa to be here, and I've interacted with the people who initiated this radio station. We need it even in the other public hospital, and it's just really exciting to have seen this thing the project coming through to what it is today.
A Lollipop radio station? So this is aimed at children? It's for the kids? Only children?
Run by children. I've spoken to Jeremiah and the other 3 kids that were there. It's really exciting. They'll also be going to the different wards. I mean, it's like so exciting. As I'm saying, it's a first in Africa, so you can make a turn and go and see how it's operating. So we're just intending to really roll it out. Charlotte McLeod, not far from it, because the children must really be treated with special care. And I think, of course, the other service that are going providing here, in just the skin-related and services that are going to ensure that children who were affected by fire, their skin is repaired and fixed so that they can be normal children again. Yes.
MEC, thank you for talking to us. It is a good day. It really is a good day in South Africa. And I just think what makes it even more special is in the 5th of December, I mean, that's, the day we lost Tata. And here to celebrate him, this is what's happening on this particular day, just to ensure that his legacy and his dream is kept alive.
We can only be excited and celebrate humanity. We had a great leader, and I think what we're seeing today is just one of his dreams that have finally come true. And I think wherever he is, we're simply saying, may your soul rest in peace and continue to shine a bright spark on this hospital, so that the donors who still need to come on board to raise money, to give money here, let them open their hearts.
Indeed. Thank you very much. MEC Qedani Mhlangu is talking to us here in her capacity as the MEC of Health in Gauteng, and a very proud moment for anybody and everybody that's involved in this facility and who's been involved in the creation of this. And today we realize that the dream is alive, it's well, and South Africans are making it come true.
In honor of his legacy, the great Nelson Mandela, the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital. Now, the last of the 3 rating agencies will deliver its verdict on South Africa's sovereign credit rating today. Standard & Poor rates the country only 1 notch above in sub-investment grade, or so-called junk status, with a negative outlook. The other 2 rating agencies, Fitch and Moody's, gave the country a reprieve last week when they left South Africa's credit rating unchanged at 2 notches above junk status, although Fitch cut its outlook to negative because, they say, of low growth and political risk. With S&P's rating outlook already negative, there's a possibility that the next move will be a downgrade. The Western Cape High Court is set to hear an application for an interdict by the SABC's only remaining board member, Professor Mboleni Maguve, today. Now, he's seeking to stop an inquiry into the Public Broadcasters Board by Parliament's ad hoc committee headed by the ANC's MP Vincent Smith. Maguve launched the application on Monday, but Judge Siraj Desai ruled that it would be heard today. This prevented the ad hoc committee from starting with the investigation into the fitness of the SAB board to hold office, which was scheduled for Tuesday this week. Maguve has argued in court papers that the ad hoc committee won't give him a fair and impartial hearing. The Democratic Alliance says it will be in court to oppose Maguve's application. The court says it will argue for the inquiry to go ahead in order to restore the integrity of the public broadcaster. And another case that we're asking you a question on our poll today, whether or not they should get bail. The bail application of two men who allegedly forced a man into a coffin and threatened to set him alight are expected to continue in the Middelburg Magistrates Court today. Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martin Jackson allegedly beat farm worker Victor Mhlotshwa before forcing him into the coffin. Proceedings were postponed yesterday because the defense failed to complete its cross-examination. The suspects face charges of assault after allegedly beating Victor Mhlotshwa. Now, the incident was recorded on a cell phone and went viral earlier this month. Yesterday, investigating officer Dimokatso Bahule opposed the bail application due to threats by residents of Middelburg.
It was bound to be an interesting debate with Donald and Hillary, him not even having bothered to prepare. So he was flying on instinct. And it didn't come across quite well. I'm starting a hashtag, medical fees must fall. There are many students who are protesting who are not necessarily violent. The students are saying the issue is how to implement, whereas the Commission's mandate is to look at feasibility.
Yeah. Among these countries, only South Africa allows same-sex marriages. Very concerning indeed, Prof.
Your sexual orientation does not demean your own humanity, doesn't make you less of a human being. That really is the essence.
The South African cabinet reiterated once more that South Africa is committed to the Independent Power Producers Procurement Program, or the IPP, despite utterances by the Eskom CEO Brian Molefe to the contrary. Jeff Radebe, Minister in the Presidency responsible for planning and monitoring, repeated that the IPP program will produce a significant share of South Africa's new electricity capacity and that it's a critical component that underpins economic activity and growth. The Independent Power Producers Procurement Program has been designed to contribute towards the target of over 3,500 megawatts to start and stimulate the renewable energy and industry here in South Africa. Earlier this week, we spoke to Nelisiwe Mngubane, the chairperson of Matleng Energy Solutions, a solutions company that really seeks to provide a complete energy mix. And this is what she said.
My contract ended in November 2014 with government, and before that I used to work for Eskom, and also I used to be a consulting engineer. And what happened then was, to be able to continue living, went back to the private sector to start the Matleng Energy Solutions with my 4 other partners, Corey van der Wath, Dr. Sileme Milato, Ms. Elsa Wright, and of course, Yolandi Talriad.
Tell us, how's it going thus far?
No, it's going pretty well. We are doing a lot of exciting work. We are doing a lot of work in Gauteng. We're doing a lot of work in Eastern Cape and also Limpopo.
Now, how important are the independent power producers in the energy mix of South Africa?
They are extremely important because they provide an opportunity for investment to begin with. I'm sure you've heard that to date, investments that have been made by the independent power producers is in excess of 150 billion rand. And what also means then is that we are able to diversify our energy mix. So that also assists us in also getting also best practice from private sector.
Now, as Matleng Energy Solutions, how much are you putting back into the grid currently through renewable energy?
Oh, we are not an independent power producer, but what we are a consulting engineering firm, and we provide energy solutions. So our focus is mainly on all energy, primary energy sources. We work on gas, we also work on solar photovoltaic, we also work on normal grid electricity.
What do you think are some of the challenges that the IPPs would face in the near future?
I think the biggest challenge that obviously that's gonna be there is making sure that the program continues, and that is going to be quite important in terms of government commitments in this program. And as you correctly pointed out, excuse me, as you correctly pointed out, Minister Jeff Radebe has indicated that government continues to be committed on that. So what would be really important is that government and state-owned entities, they speak in one voice in terms of independent power producers in order to ensure that there is confidence in the program.
Now, how do you deal with the discomfort, of course, caused by the utterances of the CEO of Eskom, Brian Molefe, that says that they no longer really want to plan to support any new IPP connections as well as energy purchases, and of course there is that leaning towards nuclear energy?
Yes. First and foremost, I think what is important here is for a number of stakeholders to sit around the table and really have an honest talk. Because what is important is for us to be able to identify what exactly are the problems. There are certain nuggets of truth in the fact that we need to be able to ensure that we roll out the program in a more better manner. In other words, make sure that it's in the right place in terms of the grid.
And it is sustainable.
That's correct. Yeah, that is very important. Also, I'm also of the view that nuclear also has got a role to play in the energy mix, as it has been shown by the recent energy plan that has been published by government. So there is a role to play in that space. So I always believe that the cake is big, everybody can have a slice.
As a company, where do you currently make a difference?
Okay, what we do is we work a lot with housing developments at this point in time. We also work a lot with municipalities. As I indicated, in the Eastern Cape, we've been working with Emalahleni municipality, formerly known as Lady Frere. We are also working now at Lipalale with regards to also with the municipality there. We also do quite a lot of work with some of the top 4 developers in the country.
And you give them a 360 solution to their energy problem?
That's correct.
Right. I thank you so much for coming in, and good luck for the future. Do you see that there is a future for independent producers?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very optimistic about the future of South Africa and the energy space. Yes, there is quite a lot of talking right now, which is what we need to do. We need to be able to talk. It's quite a lot of talking as we speak. However, I still firmly believe that there is an opportunity for everybody to play their role in the energy space.
We're asking our viewers, though, today whether or not illegal electricity connection should be declared an economic crime. What is your view on that, and do you think that that will assist in bringing down illegal electricity connections?
I'm of the view that when it comes to issues of service delivery, we should not be legislating. What we should be doing is should be coming up with solutions on how that could be done. For example, as we speak, most if not all municipalities do have certain amounts of money set aside to assist the poorer communities. And all it needs then therefore to be done is to make sure then that those kind of funds are appropriately distributed to the right people, rather than to simply just say it's a crime. However, between you and I, also we do find large customer users also bypassing meters. Those should be prosecuted.
Gabani saying that Isinyoka is the problem. Well, the South African National Civic Organization has called on authorities to target assets of businesses responsible for theft of electricity from Eskom and municipalities. According to the latest figures released by EE Publishers, residents account for 46% of electricity stolen, and businesses, which include industry, commerce and agriculture, account for 54%. But a debt-collecting company, Zandile Management Services, thinks that they might have an answer to South Africa's crippling service delivery shortcomings. The debt recovery service company has developed a product that collects outstanding payments for municipal services on behalf of municipalities that have been struggling to get the money into their coffers. Earlier this week, we were joined by the chairperson of SANCO in Gauteng, Chris Malimache, as well as the chief executive officer of Zandile Management Services, Fikile Bile.
The culture of non-payment doesn't start yesterday. It started when we took over this country as a democratic country. We promised people freebies. People thought that if they will vote for a certain political party, everything is for free. Now, when it comes to bridging of electricity and bypassing, it's also done by municipal employees because they want to receive kickbacks, you know. And then you look at the usage of buildings of private sector. You find that someone has rented out a massive brand supermarket, like the big supermarkets, but he pays 20,000. But when you go into that supermarket, they've got fridges, ovens, electricity. So the owner himself has bypassed the electricity with the assistance of the municipality. That's why at Zandile Management Services, we even developed a smart meter that can see if the municipality or of any individual has bypassed electricity.
A couple of things, Mr. Malachani, was mentioned there. One of them was that municipalities want to be politically relevant, and of course the other one is that government is not paying. Now, as SANCO, why are you singling out then businesses for not paying their electricity?
No, like he's clearly said, in terms of the supermarket that can be run in the township, we see those things. We are not denying the fact that the government is not paying, and if it can be proven out that the government is not paying, we are saying they are obliged to pay as they are paying to SARS. We are saying the very same business people, they must pay. These are the people that we see day in, day out. Therefore, we cannot keep quiet and say why the government is not there. We are saying it's what we see on the ground. Therefore, there's a proof on them. Equals to the government. If there's a proof on them, we are saying let everybody pay for electricity.
So you admit that your members are some of the culprits here?
Not necessarily SANCO members. We are saying society at large are the culprits, and that needs to be dealt with.
What are you doing about your members as SANCO who are found to be culprits?
Now, what we are saying as SANCO, what we normally do with our outreach program is that in each and every street, because now we are operating, the strength is coming from the street. Our street committees, they are preaching the gospel that illegal connection is not allowed. After we have experienced a number of losses, based on that, we want Eskom to be part of us. When they operate, they launched the Operation Kanyisa, they left us deliberately, but we are the only people who can manage to ensure that it succeeds. We are not necessarily want to be part of Eskom in terms of the profit. We are saying we are sick and tired of losing our own people because of these illegal connections.
Mr. Bailey, what are you as a company doing, and what strategies are you implementing to make sure that this money is recovered?
We've got different strategies. The first thing that we do when we start with a municipality, we'll do a data cleansing and a background check. Because sometimes we come across a lot of people owing money and the municipality wants to write it off. All to find out that person actually does have an income, but the municipality does not have the background of the person. So we'll do a background check and see. Sometimes you come across that someone has been registered as an indigent 2015, 2016 he's got a job, 2017 he still doesn't pay. You understand what I mean? So I don't think municipalities got capacity and systems in place to do these collections and see who is bypassing. But also on the issue of Eskom doesn't have a, they cannot put their foot on the ground. They're just talking, you know. They will mention that they are going to cut off certain municipalities in a certain province that they are so afraid of. that is owing more than all the other provinces. But time to switch off, dololo, they don't switch off. But it's because they will receive a mandate as ESCOM, don't do it. So at the end of the day, now if ESCOM does not switch off, it means the people will never take, the municipalities will never take ESCOM seriously, and it means the community also will never take municipalities seriously. So ESCOM, before you can make any statements, you must act.
Now, we've heard earlier from Salga that it's not necessarily the municipalities that's at fault here. There's a 50-50 fault. There's also consumers and businesses within that municipality.
And government.
If we come back to you, sir, what do you think should be done, especially to households which is not really coming to the party to assist ESCOM or even government to make sure that they pay their electricity bills?
I think it's easy. What needs to be done is to suspend the account. Suspending the account, they will lead them to come to the offices. Clearly so, we will put them on the database and try to understand what are your problems. If they are indigent, therefore they will qualify to get free electricity, not illegal connected electricity. Therefore we can deal with that. But those who are found to be guilty, I think they must be prosecuted, nothing else.
But Mr. Malamacha, there's also hospitals in those areas. How do you cut them off if they owe the municipality?
You see, it's a tricky one because there's life. But the question is how it happened that it reached that particular point. Somebody must be taken to task. It's either the CEO or the minister must be taken to task. So that at the meantime, this thing connected, we go straight to the provincial government and say, you are liable because the very same municipality is failing there. Or we go to the national treasury and say, you pay direct to us, rather to give this to province, because that on its own is calling for putting that particular structure under administration because it fails.
In terms of your systems, how would you deal with that? Because it's a problem.
If I don't go to Treasury, I send a sheriff to the MEC or the minister's office to attach the assets of the minister or the MEC or the DG so that they must pay. I've done it in the Northern Cape, where I'll send a sheriff. If government don't pay, I'm not apologetic, because government receive allocations and they don't utilize those allocations, the municipalities and government, and then that money goes back to Treasury. So at the end of the day, any government department that does not pay a municipality where I work, I'll send a sheriff, I want that money. I work in Limpopo, in a municipality called Sukukuni district. Those people, they've given me a mandate. Those mines there, they know when my company comes there, if I say I come and switch off the water for the mine, I'm not apologetic. Our municipalities will never be able to render better services if the community and business and government don't pay. So I'm saying to municipalities, stop this thing of being soft. You must put your feet down.
But alternatively, there are municipalities whose residents are paying their municipality rates, taxes and water, but the municipality does not pay that money. Both of you answer that question. Money where? They don't pay the money to ESCOM.
Now it's ESCOM tend to take action. You see here, I think these people are busy playing games. I am saying, ESCOM, if a particular municipality don't pay you, cut off. If someone was in life support, it's unfortunate, but whose responsibility is that? Now, if someone is on life support and there's only 2 people in a municipality, does it mean that they will not cut off because of those 2 people? It is the responsibility of the municipality.
So are you suggesting there should be collateral damage, Mr. Bill?
No. I'm saying if the hospital, for example, does not pay, they should make sure they've got a backup generator. We want the money. I'm a collector, we want the money.
What we cannot condone is a situation where by mere debt then we lose lives. That we are not going to agree as the South African National Civic Organization. We are saying those who are responsible, let them be taken to task before we tamper with the life of people, because what will be the use of cutting now, then we lose 10 lives. After 2 weeks the debt has been covered. Then we have lost it.
But you know what is the other question? South Africans, they will never pay SABC TV license, but they will pay certain TV channels, certain companies, because those companies, they don't care if you've got minor or indigent, they switch you off. Now, when I say let's do indigent verification and data cleansing, I came across houses in a lot of townships. These people, they are indigents, but they've got a huge dish on their house, you know, and then when you look at it, is the highest and is the most expensive. When you go into the house, I came across a grand old lady who has an iPad, but she's an indigent. So South Africans must stop playing games here. You know, if we don't put our foot down, we'll become a banana republic. I am saying to anyone who's watching this program, if you don't pay for municipal services, you must know you are the cause of this country collapsing, because we must pay for our services. And politicians should step aside from encouraging people to not pay for services. Some politicians, for example, councillors, will want people to, they will register people fraudulently, wrongly, as indigent to remain politically relevant in their wards, to remain councillors or whatever. I am saying National must do a data cleansing for all South Africans. We must pay up. You can't have a smartphone, beautiful phone, but you can't afford municipal services.
No, but I think before we go on, let's clear this. Here are the communities that I lead. They've paid their services to the municipality. I think that was the question.
That's the question.
Then the municipality is the one that is not paying to the service provider.
Which is ESCOM.
Which is ESCOM.
Now,
in that case, there's no way we'll allow ESCOM to go and cut the electricity at a certain hospital. They're on its own, ESCOM, and the very same tool.
Then it's very simple with municipalities. If the municipality did not pay, I do work also for ESCOM. If the municipality did not pay ESCOM, ESCOM can also send the sheriff to attach their assets, take their cars, freeze their bank account. They must pay, because now the money they were supposed to pay for ESCOM is probably going out on tenders, which were not even budgeted for. You understand me? Because someone, you know, someone resources.
Yes. Now, your strategy includes cutting off people that don't pay, but what will happen in the case where there's an illegal connection and they just reconnect it again? What do you do in terms of your strategy?
We remove the meter altogether. We remove the meter altogether, and then with water, we cannot remove the water, but we do what we call throttle flow. You will open the bath and go to Bloemfontein and come back to Joburg. It will still not be full. It will be tripping. That's how we punish those who don't pay for municipal services.
In closing, gentlemen, how do we solve the issue of non-payment, especially in our townships?
No, I think as SANCO we call upon whoever is utilizing the services of municipalities to be responsible and pay for those. We are from the apartheid where we applied this strategy in a form of saying rand boycott because we wanted to collapse the then government. But now you use it, you pay it. There's no way we are ever going to agree that people use everything for free. We want everybody to be liable for their debts. We are saying no to illegal connection. It kills people. We are saying no to free water that is not due to you. We are saying let's pay everything that is due to us, and we have been utilizing them.
Mr. Bailey?
You know, number one, let's make sure that each and every household has a prepaid. Those who cannot afford conventional meters. Let's make sure that...
But people don't want those prepaid meters.
Because they want to bypass. Prepaid, you'll be able even to use electricity safely, including water, because now you can see we've got a drought. Now we have prepaid water meters and prepaid electricity. So let's also use prepaid water, because some people, you know, the government has been talking in Gauteng that please don't fill up your swimming pools. They do it. So if you've got prepaid water, you will not fill up that swimming pool. And then the other thing is the culture of non-payment. During apartheid, our people were paying. Now in the new democracy, I think our people are also taking our government for granted. So there's no introspection, there's nothing. Let the law take its course. If you don't pay, face the music. That's all.
Assumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
A self-proclaimed farm boy has taken South African comedy stage by storm, and South Africans have come to love his change in characters as he tells us his personal stories of growing up as a small-town kid after moving to the big city. Joining us now in our studio from our Sea Point studios in Cape Town is funny man and comedian Carl Weber. Carl, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good day, good day, good day, good morning.
First and foremost, tell me about your story, farm boy turned comedian. How did that happen, and on the farm nogal, of all places?
Well, Elvis, it's a real romantic story. I mean, I left Bloemfontein a couple of years ago looking for my pot of gold in Cape Town, the proverbial pot of gold, and I think I found it.
What made you decide to go into comedy, though?
Well, I've always thought I had funny bones, just never had the guts to get onto stage. And one day, just by accident, I ended up on a stage, and I performed to a few people, and I am happy to say that it went horrible my very first time, but I got a lot better.
Now, a lot of comedians draw their content from political environment, and because they say we've got the best strip of comedy in our political environment. But there's been talk about this new hate speech bill, right? How do you think this will affect you as a comedian and other comedians expressing yourself?
Well, a couple of comedians across the country was interviewed on this specific topic in my performance.
Mm-hmm. Now, there seems to be a boom in South Africa with comedians really all over the place. Trevor Noah, of course, making international headlines and so forth. But is it difficult in this particular industry to get into, you think?
You know, it is quite difficult in the beginning. I always tell the new comics, you have to absolutely love stand-up comedy. It is a beautiful beast, and it will eat you up alive if you don't love it.
Mm-hmm. Your message to comedians out there, or young people that want to get into the industry, what would you say to them?
You know what, I feel that I'd like to tell kids in the community who maybe come from less than middle-class communities, if you've got a talent, if you feel that you are funny, pursue it relentlessly. I mean, there are ways and means. We are taking shows to the community, giving people open mic nights where they can come up and do a couple of minutes, and just pursue it relentlessly. I mean, if you've got funny bones, do it.
Now, for people that don't have access to comedy clubs like we are talking about, people from small rural areas, what should they do? Should they perform for their own families first?
You know what? Do it in your lounge. Do it to your friends around the braai, wherever you can get an audience. The audience is two people. So wherever you get that audience, go walk down the road and entertain people, as long as you're entertaining people.
Just briefly, give us a little bit of your stage performance, what you would do on a nightly basis.
Well, I get paid to perform nowadays, so I don't know if I can do that, but I do have a one-man show coming up.
When is that?
That is next week, the 6th and 7th of December, happening at the Garden Court Theatre in Cape Town.
Right, Carl, all the best of luck and enjoy the stint.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Thank you for having me.
That was Carl Weber, comedy, all the way from Bloemfontein, moved to Cape Town, and of course, that's what he's doing. It's now Kendall with your sports news, giving you more there.
Thank you very much, Elvis. What better way to get into the weekend vibe than find out that comedians are doing their thing all over the country, and that looks like it's going to be a good show, I tell you what. Now, coming into the sport, South Africa have had a respectable start to the first tournament of World Rugby's 7th Series in Dubai. After beating Uganda 46-0 in their opening match, the Blitzbokke had to come from 5-0 behind at half-time to beat Scotland 21-5. Scotland beat the United States in their opening match. Here's a look at the highlights of that second match.
Cock waits, spins it out to Snyman, the captain. Into midfield, South Africa have men over, and it's the danger man himself, the flyer, Siapelo Senatla. You just can't stop this man. Once he eyes the try line, 160 tries, that's a remarkable achievement. And an even better one there from Scott Riddell on Quagga Smith. Good intelligent play by Khadul, giving chase to Speckman. Fresh legs, fresh impetus. Try time! Great score, and what a timely substitution from Neil Powell. Line out. Geduld. Again, it's the flyer. Oh, the player of the year. And this is why he was nominated and awarded the Player of the Year award. Sibella Senatla. Fantastic score again.
To score the try.
Brilliant. That just about seals it then for South Africa. A job well done, having overwhelmed Uganda first time out this morning. They've downed the colours of Scotland by 21 points to 5.
Now, preparations to repatriate the bodies of the Brazilian soccer players and Bolivian citizens who were killed in a Colombian plane crash earlier this week are well underway. In a Medellin funeral home, flags bearing the team logo and ribbons with players' names were draped over dozens of coffins waiting to carry the remains back to Brazil. Family members watched the process, still trying to absorb the shock of the tragedy that killed 71 people, wiping out the Brazilian Chapecoense soccer team. Meanwhile, Bolivian authorities on Thursday suspended the license of the tiny charter airline that owned the doomed charter plane. Monday night's disaster sent shockwaves across the global soccer community and plunged Latin America's largest nation, Brazil, into mourning as it reels from a deep recession and political crisis. The small Chapecoense team was traveling to the biggest game in its history, the final of the Copa Sudamericana. Colombian investigators said the crash might have resulted from the lack of fuel on the plane operated by charter airline La Milla Bolivia. Freddy Bonicia, Secretary of Airline Security at Colombia's Aviation Authority, said investigators combing the crash site on a wooded hillside outside of Medellin found no traces of fuel in the wreckage of the BAE 146 made by Britain's BAE Systems plc. Only 6 on board the flight survived, 3 Chapecoense team members, a journalist, and 2 Bolivian crew members. What a way to go, Elvis. I mean, they were on their way to the biggest match of their career, Copa Sudamericana, equivalent to the Confederations Cup that they've got down here, the CAF Confederations Cup or the Europa League.
Yes.
And they all perished just before that.
I tell you. Sad day and sad week for Brazilian soccer. But that's what we got to leave it, Kendall. From myself, Elvis Preston, we'll see you bright and early. That's Monday morning right here on your favorite channel. This is Newsroom. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.